Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We're an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we come together and talk about a new anime we've recently watched. We discuss it in a kind of a book club format. We recap the story, share our thoughts, our predictions, and then we turn that discussion over to you, our listeners, the comment section, to carry on whatever we've started because we are just three Bakas. That is not a metaphor for anything, which you can tell because I don't know what a metaphor is, obviously. We watched the first 14 episodes of Frieren Beyond Journey's End. That's right, I learned the name in the past 2 weeks. And to discuss it, I need the help of my co-host. First off, we have the Legolas to my Strider, Jeremy, with his hot take. We're workshopping now that we introduce this. Go ahead.
So let's see. Anime need better motivation for the main storyline than just coming to a character's emotional closure. Yeah, that's my hot take.
So hot, so spicy. We also have the Dobby to my Potter. It is Jason with his hot take.
We didn't need Super.
I agree with that one.
Dragon Ball?
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
I watched quite a bit of it. I haven't finished it, but...
Did you watch the Tournament of Power?
I did not finish the Tournament of Power, no.
Did you start the Tournament of Power?
Yeah, a couple episodes in.
Okay. I almost...
Okay.
Look, your hot take's good. I just think the Tournament of Power was totally worth it.
I was about to say, story's decent. I love the increase in power and the more Dragon Ball is always great, but story wise, I think the story should have ended and stayed ended after Boo.
It did for some of us.
This isn't. This is before Oob. So we haven't reached the ending of Dragon Ball Z yet.
Timeline, yes, you're correct. However, my point still stands.
All I know is the Tournament of Power took out flying, and that was the best thing they've ever done. It fixed so many issues. It made martial arts matter again.
It took out flying? That's dumb.
It just was a rule. You can't fly in the tournament.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying like...
that way they could have a ring out scenario against all these superhumans. But, and then again, it made... martial arts mattered, and so Krillin knows techniques that even though he might be as strong, he could throw other opponents' body weights, things like that. It just mattered again. It was nice. All right, my name is Troy, and my hot take is: if you spend your time trying to do One Punch Man's power scaling versus other characters, you miss out on the fact that the point of One Punch Man is to make fun of power scaling, and you are letting the jokes just smack you straight in the face.
Oh, that joke feels good smacking you in the face.
I saw a Reddit post today, Saitama versus someone, and it was like that's the whole point of Saitama. Doesn't matter. It's laughing at you.
I mean, at that point, it's just Saitama beats everything, right? Except Popeye.
You missed the point.
Saitama beats everything because that's the point of Saitama, is that nothing can beat him.
Literally.
But I watched Death Battle.
Yeah, not anymore, you don't.
I did, though. I saw that one.
They'll come back. Death Battle will come back, guys. Yeah. I believe.
They were just KO'd for a while. The first tournament.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
All right. We need to talk about Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Again, we are just discussing the first 14 episodes. That's all we've seen. That's all we know about. So we will have theories. They will be wrong for those of you who have already finished the entire anime. Why wouldn't you have? It was the hit of its seasons. But we are here to discuss. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, just so everyone knows, this is a critically acclaimed legend in the making.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is the closest
Oh.
to a 10 that I've seen on my anime list ever.
Wow. Who is rating these?
Jason, why don't we start us off with your non-spoiler thoughts of the first 14 episodes of Frieren Beyond Journey's End?
You said it probably best in our pre-show. This is a masterclass in show not tell. The flow, I'm a sucker for a long burn character arc. And this is another anime that does characters absolutely amazing. And each character is getting their own arc. Each character matters. I had trouble finding scenes that I felt were wasted time. The story itself is this lovely tale of the dealing with and like the psychological like mind experiment of the passage of time and dealing with trauma. It's just it's a wonderful story, and I'm just like really deep into it. So
All right, Jeremy, your thoughts.
I'm kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum almost entirely. I was bored out of my mind. The anime has some redeeming qualities, in my opinion. Some of those are things like the characters are well written and they make good decisions. I saw a lot of sensible decisions being made by NPCs, shall we say, or characters that really didn't matter that much in the background. You know, they were only there for maybe an episode or two, but they were still smart. They acted the way I would expect a real person to act, and that was pretty cool. But I'd say this anime is probably like the closest you can get to a shoujo while not being a shoujo, because what really matters is, like Jason says, it's all about Jason's gone.
That's mostly an audible podcast, man.
Yeah.
Auditory podcast. No one can
sorry,
see-
I know it's just I
That's
didn't want
what
to
I call it
interrupt
now.
him, but yeah, I
but
had
I
to make the
wanted to
joke.
run away.
Yes.
For those listening, I turned off my camera as if I'd left the call. So
Yes. But yeah, it focuses so much on her emotions and her closure for the things that she's experienced. And I don't know, for me, that's not a story beat that I care about. So having that be the core of the season, at least, maybe the entire anime, it's way outside my wheelhouse. I'll say that to be nice.
I personally think this anime is beautiful. I think it's it's amazing. I think I'll say I went to my daughter who's 18 and I said, I'm surprised how much your generation is enjoying this, because this felt very much a story for older people. Me as a man who's 40 years old, a lot resonated with me in the storytelling. And I was like, I thought, I'm surprised how much young people care, because I don't think you've gone through some of these things yet of friends making a major impact on you and going on their way, and that just being a part of life. And she's like, no, Dad, my generation eats this stuff up. We love this. And I said, okay, fair enough. That was probably my one thing that I have negative to say about it, is that I felt a little bit aimed at older viewers, even though it is a shonen, which means it's for teenagers. But it's got great quality storytelling. It's got wonderful characters. Animation's beautiful. And the unsung hero, the reason I got misty-eyed 6 times out of in this anime, the music. The soundtrack is doing a lot of heavy lifting. That's not a diss on the writing, because the writing is still great, but that music comes in. It's deceptive. It's playing like fantasy musical lutes, and you're like, oh, it's a nice classic fantasy world. And then like the piano score comes in, and it hits you with this emotionally heavy, somber song, and suddenly you're like, why am I so sad all of a sudden? The music is perfect. Probably one of the few times I've ever noticed music being perfect in an anime, so I had to sing its praises. Your guys' thoughts on the opening and closing, speaking of music?
Yeah, the music on both ends I actually really enjoyed. And the visuals, I have to call out the ED first. It was like a kaleidoscope of coolness. Is kind of the best way I could describe it. It was like this semi like paper art thing going on with some of the meaning of that happened in it, and I actually really enjoyed that. And then the visuals of the OP were really good as well. I liked that it didn't feel too spoilery watching it, and then the focus on the characters was good. So
I loved the intro. The music was fantastic for the intro. I hated the outro. When a song starts with "Are you okay?" I'm like, nope, nope.
How dare you ask me that song?
Yes. It's so whiny and cringy. The kaleidoscope was cool. I liked the artwork for it, but God, I hated that song.
You're gonna strain my neck shaking it at you so hard. I like
his neck.
I like
Bring it.
I thought the outro did a great job of hitting just the right somber tone of exiting the story, and the intro does the same, where it kind of builds up like this. Hey, we're going on an adventure. It's a quest. It's a good time we're having. Also, the visuals in the OP are again masterclass. The shots of her former companions are all facing her. The shots of her new companions are all have their back to her because they are ahead, the future. Her old companions are the past, so they're facing her. But then shows the split screen of her following the first party but leading the second party, but it's just her in the middle walking. Oh, just great visual thematic storytelling in the OP. Great job. All
Hear
right,
that, Jeremy? Great job.
I'll give you that. I mean, it's like abstract art. You picked out something pretty cool.
that was there. Clearly intended.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
And Jason, in Jeremy's defense, he has very carefully worded it in my opinion, every time. He has not had any definitive, this is obviously terrible, and that's fine. I'm not here to even fight with Jeremy. I'm here to sing the praises of the anime that touched me. I know you are, so I'm gonna let you do it.
I'm here for a fight, so
I
come
know
on.
you are. All right. In case you didn't know, the next episode of our podcast will be on the second half of Frieren. More of the same, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Even though I will say I kind of wonder if there'll be a whole lot to talk about, because I have a feeling we'll just keep exploring the same themes and the character arcs.
That's a really good question.
I do wonder, but I've had that question before, and we usually find some way to get through. So it should be okay.
Yeah.
Man, it sounds like Jeremy's talking about the Speed Racer movie.
Yes, I love it.
You mean the
Sorry,
anime
I
adaptation?
tell myself.
We need to watch that movie as a group.
I think so.
Somehow make
Maybe
that
we'll
happen.
do a mini-sode.
Yeah, we should do a
Can
mini-sode.
we do Speed Racer?
I would watch it for a mini-sode.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. I'll find out if I need to edit this or not.
Yeah.
All right. From this point on, there will be spoilers. Again, just for the first 14 episodes. We don't know anything beyond that. But spoiler warning for those of you who somehow have not watched this and are coming here to decide if that's what you want to do. Small crowd. But we're glad you're here. We hope to guide you.
Away.
Listen. Nope. Listen to the majority.
Incorrect.
He doesn't have emotions. He is Frieren. He just doesn't realize it. All right. Okay, so we are in a very, very generic fantasy world, like as classic as you can come. And I'm sure for some of us, that's a complaint.
Very painful. It's extremely painful.
I think it's brilliant. And I wanted to call out the setup because it's so familiar that they don't have to bother talking about anything. They just, this. A party went on a venture against a demon king. There was a hero, a warrior, a mage, a healer. They did their thing. You know it. You know the story 1,000 times. We're here to talk about the aftermath. We're here to talk about the lives that continue after that. And I honestly started the first episode. I'm like, this is genius. You can hit the ground running with your story.
Here for this. Yeah.
So go ahead.
One of the things that really impressed me was the lack of video game systems.
Yeah, thank you.
Like no screens were coming up.
Yep.
No one's back had stats on it. Like it was just this could be taking place in Middle Earth. Like this was very fancy.
Yeah, it came across as an actual medieval fantasy world as opposed to some kind of, isekai or video game transposition of that, which was great. And I'll agree with you guys, like starting after the defeat of the Demon King in a generic fantasy world seems really cool. And that some of that is really cool. Like being after defeating the Demon King. The generic fantasy world is the part that I have trouble with. And I know that you guys love it because it allows you to focus on the things that don't matter, like character development. But the reason I don't...
I'm sorry. Did those words just come out of your mouth?
The reason I don't
That's
like
the biggest thing we complain about on this show.
You guys do. Is that, like, I want more interesting things going on in the world. Like, if you're not going to give me an interesting story that the characters are going on, then you have to at least give me an interesting world. So a generic fantasy world to me is too bland. Like I need something else if I'm going to watch sort of romance or melodramatic
I think the best word for it is a character study. This is a character study to explore themes.
I need something.
No, not boring.
To keep me entertained.
Which anime did you watch? Because we're gonna get into it, but like multiple towns are like facing dire straits. Yeah. There's multiple people in very serious trouble. There's, I mean, the first 3 episodes, we have a demon lord that has to be taken care of because he's coming out of stasis. Like, I don't.
Nah, he was not even an issue. I mean, like his magic was so weak.
Can we wait till we're there?
Okay.
Yeah.
No nuance. He does not understand that word.
Oh no, I get it. It's just dumb.
Nope. It's not dumb. It's just not satisfying to you.
Okay, sorry. Yes, it's dumb to me.
Okay, so let me explain to why, from my point of view, this works so well. It's a familiar fantasy character tropes. We have the hero, the mage, the warrior, priest, and they're very characters that seem very similar to ones we've seen before in the past. Mm-hmm. You can find them in many different animes. This story is about, again, the after part, but it came to me as this is about everyone's life. And it's told through the story of a long living mage, elf, who's over 1,000 years old. But as a 40-year-old man, it's every D&D party I've had, which is you two, by the way, that ended, and we had good times, but it came to a close. Or leaving high school, ending a job where you had good friends, but you moved on to bigger and better things, and you lost contact with those people, but that didn't mean they weren't important or didn't have value in your life. I think most people can look at what this story is trying to say and find something to relate to it, despite it being set in a fantasy setting. And I use D&D as a start because that seems like the easiest access, but really it's just about, hey, we all meet people who come into our lives, affect our lives, they're a part of our lives, and then they leave. And that's a story worth talking about. So it's a theme worth exploring.
Yeah. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. And I can see how that would be interesting for some people. For me, maybe a lot of people. I'll give you guys
some people, there's ratings online or some people.
But for me, at least, when I look back at my past, it's sort of compartmentalized. I don't look at it fondly. I don't look at it very reminiscingly. So
Very, very similar to a certain character of the anime.
yeah, but so for me, it's like I don't want to dwell on my past. So
Neither does a certain character in this anime.
It's kind of the point of the story.
well,
Which
yeah,
is why I thought eventually you would connect with it, but it turns out you did not.
no, because it's like I've already done this. I don't need to watch a character do it.
Like for me, one of the things I enjoyed reflecting on, or not enjoyed, but I reflected on the part where we're related, but you guys are also my closest friends. But there was a decade where we didn't talk, and that was. But I still cared about you during that decade, and then reconnecting you with you after that decade was fantastic. And so I found similar ground to what Frieren was going with, and it's not just you guys. There's so many people in my life again who have come, gone, and it was nice to see someone talk about it. And it never it's always, hey, the adventure is what matters. Never, what about life afterwards? What about when you say goodbye to those people?
I agree with you so much, Troy. Except I'm starting to doubt it. No.
Well, I'll shut up.
No. I there's been plenty of anime that you guys enjoyed, and I was just absolutely horrendous. So this is an interesting flipping of the tables.
Yes. It's going to continue.
So, speaking of these heroes, we're going to start with our main character, the mage of the group.
Do it again.
That's right.
The elf that's over 1,000 years old, Frieren, our main character. Your guys' thoughts on Frieren?
What a fascinating character. And one of
we can do this, guys. We can do. This is a 14 episode anime. We have a lot to talk about. We have to go. We have to move.
Okay. No, choosing this character was a great decision as far as being able to use her as the eyes of the audience. I think there's just too much for me to cover in this particular section, but like what some of the key points that I think are really standoutish is like one of Jeremy's problems. She's nearly emotionless, and you see as time passes and the traumas that she's had, she is continually putting up walls in order to talk to anyone, because she knows that these people, not only is elf kind not dying out due to some slaughter, but because they don't seem to have a desire to reproduce, but also that humans to her are like, caring for pets, because those pets are going to die in a fraction of her lifetime. And it's like, why would I want to continue to go through this trauma over and over again? And learning that lesson of maybe some relationships are worthwhile. And also like, what she does with her power, because she says she calls herself a very powerful mage. She may be the most powerful mage. And watching her make those decisions and when to use it and when not. In fact, one of my favorite moments is what we'll get to. She has zero hesitation when the enemy shows up, which I found fascinating. I definitely want to dig into that more. But yeah, I could go on and on about this character. I really enjoy it, watching her.
I found her to be, as one of the other characters put it, like the queen of obliviousness or something. I can't remember exactly what she said, but she's super oblivious. She's very bland. She doesn't have a lot of emotional expression most of the time. She wants to either be sleeping or reading her novels, right? Grimoire novels. And she's messy and kind of lazy and just sees the world as like, I'm going to idle my time away. And let's see, I guess I'll go on a quest to heaven to talk to Himmel. Yeah, let's do that. Hey, plot of the anime is here. So I don't know. She has cute moments. She has funny things that she does every now and then. She certainly has like some deeper character traits, remembering people's birthdays and stuff, that indicates that she's more than just the boring person that we get most of the time. She does make some very interesting decisions. I like how well measured she is in dealing with her scenarios. Like, she looks at a circumstance and says, "Oh, we just need to leave this town," and this happens on more than one occasion. And I like that because it shows that she's very, very quick to think things through and not rely on outbursts of emotion. So I like that a lot. But yeah, I don't know. I found her to be very boring. I tried watching a little bit of like an episode and a half, I think, in English dub, and no, nothing against the voice actress, but I don't know. I can't handle it. I had to switch back to the sub. Could not, none of them, but especially her. Like that. No, this doesn't sound right. There's something breathy in the way that all of the English voice actors in the dub speak that just, I don't know, it puts me off. It feels very fake. It's really weird. But anyways, yeah, that's Frieren.
Yeah. Personally, I watched the English dub and I thought it was a very well done English dub.
Yeah, I'm gonna crap on everything.
My opinion of Frieren is a character who is presented as one thing, as especially since she's not a character who doesn't fully understand herself. She, like Jason pointed out, she's very guarded. She's had all this trauma, all this tragedy of her past, and then was basically gone through huge stretches of time without any social interaction. And then there's a 10-year period, the adventure she goes on, and even though she's hundreds of years old, this 10 years changes her more than any of that ever did, and she doesn't understand why. It's much more obvious to us. Like, we can kind of see the moments and be like, oh yeah, you clearly form friendships and bonds. And she's like, I did? Is that what happened? I don't understand that. But she is very much a changed character, and we get to see the before and after, which seem very similar, but this anime does such a good job with its subtleties that we can see that she has grown from it, and that she's more complex than she likes to present herself. She likes to be very stoic. She likes to just kind of keep things close to the best, but she's not that at all. She's lazy. She loves to collect spells. That's her hobby, and everyone's like, well, that's a dumb hobby. She's like, no, it's a good hobby. And then we find out why she collects spells. And then, again, it's the little moments in between, and she's subtle, but those subtleties are so beautiful because they represent her true self getting to come out, her growth. She is fascinating to behold.
I find it hard to believe that a person who's been alive for 1,000 years can be that drastically affected by 10 years.
So does she.
That's the point.
Well, that to me just seems contrived. Seems like writing. It doesn't work for me. So it's not
a person who spends 1,000 years almost by themselves and then spends 10 years. She mostly was. She
was in a village for a very long time. And then after that, she was with the redhead lady for 80 years.
And then hundreds of years by herself.
Yes.
And then just a few hundred years. It's like 400.
Just a few.
For her, yeah. Just like 400 years.
Elves are also pointed out to not be very sociable. They don't really...
I identify with elves. I like the elves. I don't think that they need to change.
They don't like to mate. Well, she doesn't think they need to change it either. She wasn't trying to change, but she did, and she doesn't understand why.
Because it was written for her to change.
Sure.
Nope.
Yeah. And it just happened to be convincing enough for everybody to be like, oh, yeah, we like this.
Everything I'm seeing here, Jeremy just doesn't like to see an anime about himself.
Myself changing. I want to stay the way I am.
There we go.
Yes.
Next up, Himmel the hero. Now, the next three characters are almost all presented in a flashback. Not completely, but they're almost minor characters, but they play such a major part on Frieren and the story itself. I do feel it's important to talk about. So we want to start with Himmel the hero.
He is like cookie cutter hero protagonist in fantasy anime, and it's interesting that we then get to see his vain side, which I
Yeah.
loved. But then also that he he just kind of embraces this idea that I'm a fake hero with a fake sword,
Mhm.
but I'm going to do something real and something that matters. I thought that was fantastic. And his effect on Frieren didn't really hit her until he was gone. And I think because in this is, I think, second episode when he passes.
Uh, no, it's the first episode. Like halfway through
First
the first
episode.
episode.
Okay,
he's
yeah.
dead.
You see her crying. I don't think she was crying because she lost him. I think it was regret because she dwelled so much on, wow, I didn't really know him. And that kind of to someone that's basic, that's hundreds and hundreds of years old, because I think she's at this point in the anime somewhere around 11 or 1200 years old. To have that kind of effect and that kind of regret is fascinating. And so, like, not only Himmel was an interesting character, but like his effect on Frieren is what's really fascinating.
It makes me wonder what was it that qualifies a person to be a hero as far as like pulling the sword out, because normally that's something that's akin to riding the Nimbus cloud, right? Like you're pure of heart, or maybe your bloodline or some other thing. But whatever it was, he didn't get to actually do it, and yet he still wound up being the hero and doing all the things the hero was supposed to do. I like that a lot. I think that was a really cool story beat, and I liked his vanity. It gave him an interesting personality.
I find it funny when people say Nimbus cloud because they're just saying cloud.
Yeah. Yep.
He's probably one of my favorite characters presented because again he starts off almost 100% the cookie cutter protagonist. He even gives me some Edward Elric vibes because like he's very stoic and he's very calm and helpful, but then he has these like moments of he doesn't do rage, but he just gets really silly. The vanity, I will pose for 13 hours for this statue to get it right. But also, so a little bit of a jump ahead, but in episode 14, without saying it, the anime basically confirms he has romantic feelings for Frieren. And then when you recontextualize everything that you've seen now under that scope, was he super vain, or was he just knowing that this is the only way Frieren was going to see him for the next couple hundred years? So that's why he wanted to post for 13 hours to get it just right. Who knows? But there could
he
be.
did say that. Like there was a time where
he says.
she was. Yeah, she said, why are you doing all of these? Why are you making all these? And he says, I want people to remember how handsome I was. And as she's walking away, he's like, well, it's for you, company for you. So absolutely.
Well, even in this first episode, when she comes back and he's an old man, and we'll get to the plot point, but she's like, hey, I was here for the meteor thing, but also that horn I gave you, I need that horn. And she's like, it was just an ingredient. He's like, no, this was important to me. And I kind of didn't get it then, but then realized that was the promise he was going to get to see her again. That's why it mattered. Not because she asked him to hold it, but because this was Frieren will come back as long as I have this. So again, this anime does a great job of, it's got layers. It's like an onion. Shrek would love it. Next character is Aizen the Warrior.
I like him. He might be like further down on the list of favorite characters in this, but I think what I really appreciated about his observation of everything is that he's just so stoic in everything he says and does that it's almost a caricature of his own self. But his power is on display in a couple scenes, and then I think he's more contextualized due to his apprentice. So I think I'll save some thoughts till we meet him.
I love that his fighting style is Axe Yoda. That is my favorite part. That and just how crazy some of his feats are and how comical they are when he does them. It's always presented in a comical light whenever he's doing something spectacular. And I like that about him. I'm still trying to figure out, like, is he a dwarf? He fits all the archetype of a dwarf, the appearance of the dwarf, everything, but
Pretty
I
sure
don't
they
know.
call him a dwarf, and that's why he's living so long.
Did they call him a dwarf? Because I don't remember them
Yeah.
ever using the word.
Yeah,
No,
and
they,
like
they definitely called him a dwarf.
Oh, okay. Well, then that makes perfect sense. Yeah, he looks like the Final Fantasy dwarf, like way back from Final Fantasy 1, 2.
Sid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so yeah, he's all right. I do like the very human weakness that they gave him, which I know you're going to touch on later, Jason. So I'll leave that, but I like that beat.
The only other thing I'll add is that I just enjoy that as the other race that also seems to live long, although it doesn't seem to be as long as elves. He seems to have a little more insight into Frieren than her human companions do, where he's able to point out things about like, hey, you should take an apprentice, you should do things, you're gonna get lonely, and kind of realize, he's pointing out you're not quite getting how this time thing works for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't affect me as much as them, he even says I'm too old for this stuff now, Frieren. I can't just do what you are doing. So, the he plays a really good role, and yeah, his feats, and the fact that Frieren thinks all warriors can do whatever he does, even though it's clearly because of his dwarfness, it's fantastic. Well, I thought you guys could just take poison arrows to the back and just shrug it off.
Yeah.
It's her only exposure to a warrior.
Right.
And she just bases everything else on that.
Yep.
All right, Hyder the priest.
My favorite character. Because he does not take life too seriously, yet he is the priest. And I love every time Frieren looks at him and goes, "You corrupt priest." It's just so great. But he exemplifies the human condition just so succinctly, and he kind of wraps it in a nice bow later on when he's like, I'm just pretending to be an adult, even though he's like ancient at this point. Like, he's probably 89 years old when he's saying this, but he's like, I basically admitting I still want to drink, I still want to do the not good things, but I can't because my body won't let me anymore. But he also is able to show the value of relationships and life itself, and passing down that knowledge and making sure the next generation has what it needs. And that lesson does not seem to really resonate with Frieren until much later. And so, yeah, it's fantastic character.
Along those lines, one of the things I really did like about him was his relationship with Fern and how that changed. That when Himmel dies at the end of the first episode, one of the things he says is, "Oh, I'm not afraid to die. When it happens, no big deal." But then his mind changes drastically, and at least the way I interpreted it was that it was mainly because of Fern taking care of her and making sure that she was able to stand on her own 2 feet by the time he died. Not because he necessarily changed his opinions on everything, but because somebody needed to be cared for. He didn't want to leave them behind.
It's kind of both. He's lying when he says I'm not afraid to die.
Well, that's true.
And
Yeah.
he's also lying when he says I'm super afraid to die. Please find a way to save me. He's lying in both contexts, but he is afraid to die. But like you said, now he has this other concern, this extra thing that's been added to his life that he's working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. In its own anime, the original story, he's clearly the comic relief character, and then has become this mature, wise person to everyone else, which is one of the great things that this series does, is looking at who the person was when it was happening. Himmel was vain, Hyder was always drunk, Eisen thought everyone was stupid. And then in the legends that people tell, Hyder was mature, Himmel was always self-giving, and Eisen, well, he was still Eisen, but
Yes.
and Jason already touched on it. And I want to touch on when we actually get to it. The monologue he gives at the end touches me. It rings so true to me that it got me misty eyed for sure. There's also a recurring, not gag, but thing that he does that comes up with Frieren that I'll touch on when she first does it. That they never call it out, but it's subtle and it's weaved through the whole story and it's beautiful. And I get emotional every time it happens. So we're gonna get to it. All right, so the heroes, they come back to the capital of the kingdom. The king throws them a party, even as they're talking about, like, remember when he almost killed us when we asked him for money because Himmel was talking crap. But yeah, now they're the heroes. Everyone's celebrating, and that night they watched this meteor shower goes by that happens every 50 years, and Frieren is like, "Hey, next time I want to show you guys this really cool spot, a better place to watch this." And they're like, "Okay, that'll be a while." She's like, "It won't be that long." And she's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go." And like, "You're just leaving? You know, we've been 10 years together. You're just out?" She's like, "Yep, I got stuff to do. I will see you guys later." And she leaves. And we see time pass. This happens a lot. There's a lot of montages where time passes is just kind of in quotation marks. Now, I watched this on Crunchyroll. There was a bunch of kanji written with a number, and it didn't translate it. Did it translate that for you, Jeremy, in the subtitle version?
So it was always just telling you how long it had been since the death of Himmel.
Okay. So I kind of assumed that's what it was, and the number, you know, I could tell the number, but if I mess up the years, let me know.
Okay.
But yeah, she decides she needs to go visit Himmel again because the meteor shower is coming, and she needs that magic demon horn or dragon horn that she left him. So she goes, and now Himmel is this tiny, short.
Okay, this was funny.
Guy.
Like how much the physical traits of anime characters change as they age, but not consistently. Because Hyder stayed the same height. But Himmel, the hero, becomes like this little tiny, half his normal height guy.
It works as a good comedic joke. I also think again it serves to show the difference between the legend, because Himmel's the biggest of the legends, right? I think it was good to show him reduced to just a little old man, even though like with Hyder they don't do the same thing. After getting her again the treasured object that he saved for her. The group gathers and she's like, "Okay, guys, we're gonna go." And they take a week-long journey to get there. And they're like, "A week?" Poor Himmel's like, "A week walking down the road with his walking stick and stuff." But they go see it, and Himmel thanks her for one last adventure. And then we cut to Himmel has passed, and he's being buried in the city. And the town is actually getting upset with Frieren because she's just standing there in the church, like, "Okay, well, let's just do this. This is what happens." And then as they're burying him, then she starts crying, saying, "I wish I had known him better." Screw those town people. You don't get to tell people how to mourn. That's a personal
You don't know
rule
me.
I have. Yeah. Everyone has their own mourning style. You just let them be.
Yeah. People like to do that though. You'll often get masses throwing their opinion out there like it's fact.
Oh, really? That's something that happens?
Yeah, it's like rating Frieren.
Huh. Don't feel that's an apt comparison, but we all have opinions. Some of
I
them
need
stink.
to do my calisthenics. Forgive me.
Okay.
It's a stretch. Come on.
God, we are whipping with the jokes tonight.
I know.
We catch, I think, so about 20 years have passed, and we find Frieren lost in the woods, and she comes upon this little girl whose name is Fern, and it was on her way to see Hyder, and this little girl's living with Hyder, so she goes to Hyder's cabin. But this Fern is going to be a major character, so let's talk about Fern, the mage.
Man, there's a lot to unpack here. So at the end of 14, she's what, 16, 18, somewhere in there?
Gotta be 18, 19. She's slightly older than Stark, I think. And Stark turned
Okay.
18.
Yeah, I think 25 years after Himmel died, she was 16 because she had celebrated her 16th birthday. And then at the end of 14, it's 28 years. So I think you're right. She obviously shows her immaturity in some spots, but she also shows her how Freeren's rubbed off on her quite a bit. And she's got that parent-daughter thing going on where she doesn't want to admit it a lot of times. But I think what I find really fascinating about her is not just she's got a tough time with relationships, but she's the opposite of Frieren when it comes to time, because Frieren's like, oh yeah, this will just take 10 years. It's fine. And she's like, 10 years. Especially for someone that's in their teenage years, like that's a long, long time. And so it's an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah.
And also because she has a sense of not only just like normal time that we experience, she has a sense of urgency that Frieren just doesn't have, and she's constantly forcing her to get up, get going. We've got to move on. Go ahead.
And not just because of the teenage thing. You got to think about her past. The 3 people who have been her caretakers have all died. In her eyes, life is very short.
Right. So I also find her power scaling to be interesting. I'm not quite sure how it is, but what's really cool about this anime that we find out later is that Frieren was taught to consistently suppress her chi. No,
Basically.
her mana, so that when other mages looked at her, they couldn't tell how much she had, and so she's obviously passed this down to Fern. And so it's very difficult to see like who's who, like as far as like power level, and like so far we haven't really seen them come up against a really tough challenge. But another so sorry,
It's
I'm
almost like
kind of
power
going
scaling
on.
doesn't matter.
Well,
But
what's interesting as well is that spells are tools, and these tools are evolving over time, especially when humans change and manipulate them. And so I found it really fascinating that her ability to use she just calls them standard offensive spells, are these great spells to some other foes. And it's like that kind of passage of time is really then accentuated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that just being like she got taught the version of the spell that had all of these add-ons and stuff that Frieren had put on it, because he recognized it as, oh, okay, so you're saying this is Ultrac. I guess I could see that, but it's tailored to wipe out demons, and that's what made it so powerful against him. But the reason I say that power scaling does still matter here in this world, at least, is because they actually go out of their way to even have like a weighing of power levels to find out who controls
Right.
who.
In that one scene with that
Well,
one object, power
no,
scale matter.
not just that one scene. If you go to the other fight, they're like, she can't possibly be able to beat me. I can see how little power she has. And then, oh, you win because I realized you were hiding your power. Same exact thing happened. Just
They also
different
call out there's
circumstances.
other aspects that matter, like the speed of your casting and things.
That's true. That's true. But I mean, it doesn't take away from the fact that this is basically Goku and humans hiding their power level, and then the Saiyans and Frieza crushing the readers. That's what this was. So power scaling did matter for this conflict, and I like that part of it actually. So don't take that away from me, or I'll hate this anime even more.
Oh my god.
But speaking of her, though, since that's what this was about, I found her to be supremely unlikable in most contexts. And I know that you mentioned that she's very immature, but holy cow, man. I am right there with Stark. What is wrong with her? Why is she so hostile all the time? Like, it is overwhelming. And I went and I compared between the dub and the sub, and they did a pretty good job conveying the same thing that I was seeing in the sub when I checked. So if that was consistent throughout the entire season, man, she would be real tough to deal with. So I don't know. I find her very unlikable.
Oh, I mean, she's definitely a no fun cranky pants, but
Yeah.
she's adorable at it. Her puffy pouty face when she didn't get a birthday present was so cute. I laughed my butt off at that.
I think that they're going to make her grow, and I do look forward to that. I just think right now I'm having trouble with her.
I think the personality they gave her fits so well with the backstory they gave her. She's exactly who I would think would be someone who she is. Her parents died, and this old man takes her in. And from that point, she's on a ticking clock to be able to take care of herself. Because she knows she's not going to last much longer. And he's like, you can't take care of yourself until you can do this one thing. And this is called out, in a scene that everything I'm doing, all this work I'm putting in it is just so that I can take care of myself so he won't have to worry about me on the day he dies. She rushes to adulthood, but doesn't have the experience and the maturity to be at that adulthood that she pushed herself to, which now comes off as this Stark, bossy, cranky pants, who especially contrasted with Frieren, who is lackadaisical and super naive about a lot of things in the world, despite her wisdom and age. I think they contrast really well against each other. And like I said, I think it fits her very well. I don't mind that she's over bossy and kind of a cranky person, because again, she's growing and it fits with everything they set up for her. She's a delight. All right. So when Frieren meets Hyder, he's like, hey, I would like you to take Fern as your apprentice so that she has someone to take care of her. And she's like, no, mages are always in fights. She's just a little child. I can't possibly take her. She'll be in too much danger. He's like, okay, that's fair. I found a magic book and I need you to decipher it. She's like, this is going to take me 6 years. He's like, is that a problem? She's like, nope, 6 years ain't nothing. And he's like, oh, would you mind like showing Fern some spells while you're doing it? She's like, yeah, I'll do it. And also specifically, he wants a spell of immortality or resurrection or something like that in this book is what he's hoping. Even though it's revealed when she comes to him with the full translation, she's like, you knew this wasn't going to be in this. He's like, of course not. Because that person who wrote it isn't alive. And they would be if they had that spell. So he's doing this completely to buy time. And then we get, again, a montage. Frieren lives with them for a few years. She trains Fern. Fern's whole thing is she's already powerful at magic, but she has to be able to reach a rock across the canyon, so she's got to learn how to extend the range. So she's training in that, even though she already has this huge, powerful magic blast she can do.
And she is really hard to detect. Already.
Right. Oh yeah, because Hyder would have started teaching her that. He asked Frieren the secret. And she's like, well, why would I tell you that? He's like, well, maybe I'll have a kid someday. She's like, you're a priest. He's like, you never know. He knew it.
That. You're right. That's cool.
Layers. Yeah, years go by, and then eventually Hyder does collapse. And so we have the scene where Frieren goes up to Fern. She's like, hey, you got to come see him. And she's like, I got to keep working. He's almost gone. And she's like, you're right. He again asks her, will you take Fern as an apprentice now that enough time has passed? She says, yes, I will. But then she scolds him because he's like, hey, you guys just go. She's already watched her parents die. Just take her and go. And Frieren yells at him, scolds him. She's already mentally prepared herself for you leaving. Don't take away the last time she has left. Which I thought was... I got a little emotional, okay? That's a heavy subject. It was good. Jeremy's where's the tentacles?
Yeah. Yes.
But then on the other side of that coin as well, like how many people have tried to rush some sort of like project or career goal or some sort of like life goal before their grandparents went? Like the
Is that
this
a
is
thing?
so relatable. Or
I'm sure for some people.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
What's wrong with you?
Oh, to me, I don't know. It never even occurred to me to want to get something done before a certain point, like before somebody passed.
It's not something I've done
that's interesting.
either, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
don't mean to be like disparaging about it or anything. I'm genuinely curious. Like that's a new one to me.
No, I haven't either. But I have run into people in my life that's
Okay.
that's a thing. Like they feared that their parent that was either had cancer or their grandparent
I can
had
see that.
had some sort of aspiration
Mm-hmm.
for them, but like you knew in the back of your mind that it wasn't anything serious, but like the whole idea of, hey, when you go, I'm gonna be okay,
Mm.
that resonates with a lot of people.
And I can say as a parent, on the flip side, I'm like, hey, I want to live as long as I can, but I have to survive at least until I know they're all okay. They're all on their own feet. They're not going to need me. Then also anything after that's frosty. it's bonus for me.
And
Yeah.
and then when they don't need you, you break down in an emotional mess.
Yeah,
Emptiness.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he passes away. They bury him. She pours a drink on his grave.
Just like he asked.
Just like he asked. And then they get in the cart. Guys, and this comes up again, but when they get in the cart to leave, Frieren pats Fern's head. And up to this point, we've been seeing the flashbacks of Hyder always patted Frieren's head. She was always like, don't pat my head, don't pat my head. And they don't call it out. They just show Frieren reach over and give her that little pat. And like, oh, it mattered to her. She loved that Hyder did to it. And then we also see that in other flashbacks that, again, it kept carrying on. It takes on this whole level of meaning. It's an important thing to Frieren. Come on, that's some solid writing. Again, not having someone say, the pat became very important to me. They just show Frieren constantly using the pat.
Yeah.
She uses it with Hyder, uses it with Fern, uses it with Sign later. That it was this term of endearment. Even though she complained about it, it was actually something very important to her within those 10 years.
And it meant more to her than just endearment.
Right.
It was, I think you at this moment need someone to praise you because you don't have that in your life. And I'll be that for you.
I didn't connect that here. I connected it later when they were a little bit more heavy-handed with it, with Sign.
Right.
And I do agree. At that point, I liked it. But here, to me, it just came across as like, oh, she's just patting her head because that's what you do to a little kid. That's,
we just had 2 episodes of flashbacks where they multiple times had her call out, don't pat my head.
Yeah. Well, and I interpreted that to mean like, I'm not a child. I'm 1,000 years old. Don't treat me like a child. But then her treating a child like a child made sense. But I do agree you are correct because of the way they describe it later.
They come back to it later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They set out. They take odd jobs. So again, Frieren's hobby is collecting odd spells. There's this great moment where she's listening. She's like, I have a spell for making grapes as sour as possible. And Fern's like, why would you want that? She's like, I just do. But then 4 episodes later, we have a flashback of everyone revealing their favorite food. And Aizen the Warrior is like, I love grapes. The sourer, the better. And you're like, oh my God, she got it because she loves her friends.
Wow. See, none of this impacted me with anything. It was just like, oh, she got it because that's what Aizen liked. Cool. It really did not. I didn't care. I was like, oh, okay.
It's such good setup. It's such good character building because they paint her as this character who doesn't care and is flippant about everything. But then this very moment, she was caring the whole time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but that's
important.
That's normal. You don't. Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that crazy to me. It just seems like that's just normal every day. Yeah.
it's not that it's crazy or important. It's character building. It's depth.
But it seems like a normal behavior to me, where
How
like
many
you don't
animes
talk
do we
about.
watch that don't have any of this stuff?
Well, sure, and
we go, these characters are so flat and boring, and I don't care about them. But these characters are constantly showing that affection and relationship building on a very regular basis, and it's lovely to see. Lovely to watch.
It's a fantastic seasoning. Just can't be the main dish for me.
Okay. The next half of this episode is they take a job cleaning one of Himmel's statues. This is again where we're pointed out that he spent 13 hours posing for the statue, which is great because the old lady was a child saved by Himmel back during their adventure, and she's like, he was so brave and so awesome. We made the statue, and Frieren's like, I remember this. We sat around forever waiting for this statue to get made, and he did all these poses, and in the end, he just chose a plain standing normal pose.
I came to the realization this might be a brilliant epiphany of mine. I think I know how to fix this anime for Jeremy.
Okay.
We turn Fern into a boy / man, and he's constantly trying to steal Frieren's panties. There we go.
That would help. That would help. That would improve it. I would at least have something to laugh at. Some comedy. So
you weren't supposed to agree with me.
Well, if you what is it? What is the term? You objectively improve something, I can't deny it. Troy, do you
Troy saved me.
Do you see a contradiction in what you said a moment ago?
I don't remember what it is.
You said that she was it was taking so long for him to have his statue made, but she thought a 2-week walk was no time at all.
Not really. I think she's just pointing out that he was vain.
Okay. So it because for her, I didn't even think that she would care at all. Like, for her, it would just be like, oh, yeah, 13 hours. It was like 30 seconds. It was done.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think she cared in, like, how much it weighed on her life versus how much just listening to him will talk about himself.
I suppose.
I think it was more of, so like for me, if I'm playing a game and it's got 30 FPS, I get irritated when I think it should be having 60 or 120. So like for her, maybe doing a statue for her would be 1 second normally, but for Himmel, it's taking 20 seconds. It's like, this is taking an awfully long time in comparison. I think.
I don't think it was so much the time; it was about the amount of poses and just the whole production of it all that she's reminiscing about. And I don't think she's even reflecting negatively. Just the difference between the worship of this old lady who was saved by the hero versus how Frieren looks back at that moment. It wasn't about, hey, we slayed a monster and saved this little girl. It was like, oh yeah, that was the day he did like 13 hours of poses.
Right.
See, this is the part I have trouble with the entire conceit of the anime, and that is if time passes so fast for her that she doesn't notice entire years going by, and 2 weeks or a few years is basically considered to be a couple days. I have a really hard time believing that the conversations she has with people in those 10 years can be meaningful enough to impact her to this degree, or for her to remember everything she's experienced over this 1,000 years, and this is the highlight of her life. Maybe her life's kind of weird, so maybe, but I don't know. I'm not sold on that yet, just because of the way they've handled time with her.
You know how many people like have a particular life and then they go to some sort of event that's like an hour or too long and it changes their lives?
I don't.
Or a year.
A lot.
So, someone who falls in love, gets married for a year, loses their spouse that year. That love stays with them for the next 100 years. You can't say, well, you spent 90, but that's what this is.
No, it's not.
She fell in love with him.
No, it's not.
She doesn't realize it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, over what period of time? It wasn't a year.
10 years, right.
Right, which is the equivalent of what in 1,000 years? It does matter. It does matter because they're playing
It's
with
not one
relative
for
time.
one.
It is because they
No,
use
it is
it
not.
one for
No,
one
it's not.
constantly. They constantly make references to how quick time passes for her and how short things are. That it's even difficult for her to conceive that Fern would be upset until Fern brings it up and starts making a point of it. And then she's like, oh, yeah. So to her, time goes really fast. So like 10 years, be 1/100th. So of the life that she's currently lived up to that point, not even of her full life, we don't even know what her full life is. It's probably like 3,000 years, judging by her current appearance.
But we meet another elf who seems like he's like older than even her.
Yeah, he was he did something at some previous time that everybody's forgotten about. So I would say it's probably like a 3-month fling that changed her life forever.
I
Or
mean,
a 2 or
in
1 month
Titanic,
fling.
it was a 12-hour cruise.
Yeah, sure, and that's great as a movie.
3 hour tour.
But there you go. But I don't know. That's where I'm stuck with the general conceit of the whole thing is the way they're handling time. You're going to have to go a lot further to convince me that this 10 years, important enough things happen. Just exchanging rings and talking to like, oh, remember berries? Look, he looked at me funny, and I was inside of a mimic, and oh, my friends. Like that's just I don't know. It's not enough for me. Not enough.
I feel like you made up all these like time rules for yourself. Because
No,
like a day is still a day to her, and yet
No,
so in this scene they spend 6 months in this village, which is nothing to her. What's 6 months looking for a flower in the scope of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a day is still a day. A minute is still a minute. She still had to wait 13 hours for Himmel to pick out a pose. It's not. She still has to get up and go to sleep and eat 3 meals a day. So a day would still matter. It's not
really.
like all time changes.
The way they portrayed the time changing in episode 1, where they're like, look at all the seasons going by, that tells you how she views time. It does.
Just a
It
montage.
does. No, it's not. You're talking about themes. That's a theme I saw. The way that time is presented in this is that she does not recognize the value of time past. And that's part of what she's supposed to be learning,
That's
right?
the point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So if she
yeah.
doesn't recognize the value, there's a reason for that. And the reason is she experiences time a little differently. I don't mean that she experiences a second differently from anyone else. I mean that because she's experienced so many and because she has such a long life, she's learned to compartmentalize the moments and just kind of live in the present, essentially. Because there's no point in dwelling on the past or thinking about the future, because nothing around you is going to be around for those past and future. So you might as well just live in the present.
Right. That's exactly how she feels. And then all of a sudden, that doesn't work for because of these 10 years, and she doesn't understand why.
Right. And that's the part that I don't think it's long enough. It should have been like a 30-year trip or a 50-year trip, and then I would buy it, but not 10.
Oh, yeah.
Their math is bad. They need better math.
That's love is math.
If she was alive for like 300 years and it was 10 years, I could buy it. Not 1,000.
These are arbitrary rules you've made up for yourself.
Yeah, but they make sense to me.
Okay.
And you alone.
Okay, yes. She wants to cast a flower spell around the statue after they clean it. She wants to use flowers from Himmel's hometown that he had told her about. Again, we get a beautiful flashback of them sitting in a flower field and him telling her he wished he could show her that flower, and him making a flower. He made a flower wreath for her head, which is a symbol that comes up many times again. The circle.
And Eider made one for Heider's head too.
Yeah, you mean Eisen?
Eisen, yeah. Eider and Heider.
Eider and Eider. They can't find the flower. Eventually, through the help of a botanist and some squirrels, they find it. They're able to fly up the top of the tower, find it. Once she can see it, she can cast it, creates the flowers, creates a wreath for the statue. They move on. However, as simple as that story was, again, the music was so good that I was emotional at the scene. Like
I didn't notice the music. That's interesting.
Yeah, I know, man. What is art, though? Really?
No. Yes.
Please don't ask that question.
I got a toilet. I want to show you.
We're talking about it, so it's art.
Yes, right. That's all it takes.
There. Okay, then they go to town. So time has passed. Actually, now so much time has passed. Fern is taller than Frieren at this point. And they're shopping in town.
Frieren's jealous because Fern has bigger boobs now. That was an important beat. They pointed it out.
Important to some people. Frieren is not super happy that she has a childlike body for like all eternity. It's not ideal for her.
Yep.
Especially with the scene where she's like, "I'm an older woman, and I can seduce you," and he's like, "You look like a child."
Yeah.
It's not working for me. All right, they go to buy supplies. Frieren runs off to do her own, and she's looking at us. And Fern's following her. She's at an accessory shop. She's at a sweet shop. She's birthday shopping. Which
she goes to see the like underbelly of the city,
yeah,
which was hilarious.
Okay, that was good.
Hardcore marauders and bandits, and they're like, "We are the Sweet Tooth Gang. We know where the best cakes are." But yeah, this is all to celebrate Fern's birthday, which is again a big deal for Frieren, who tends not to care about anyone. And even Fern's whole concept of their relationship is that I'm just following her, and she doesn't really notice that I'm here. I barely matter. So this is her showing some growth. Oh, this is also the scene where we get the favorite food discussion. I love sour grapes. She buys her a butterfly hair.
Lotus and no, it is butter.
It is butterfly. Yeah, because he buys her a butterfly bag later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Butterfly hair clip. Something traveling. Oh, they continue traveling. That's what that word says. Frieren is trying to just kind of relive memories from the adventure at this point. And then, she's like, "Hey, let's practice defensive magic. We have this thing I want to go do." So she teaches Fern defensive magic and kind of explores the concepts of it. And then they go to this town where the hero's party had defeated a demon, but it was so powerful, all they could do was seal it away because it had created this super powerful magic that can defeat all defensive magic called Zoltrak, but they managed to make it backfire and seal him. And there's this old man who's like, "Oh, you must be Frieren. You finally have showed up. I was getting worried," because Himmel would visit this village frequently and say, "Don't worry, Frieren will show up and she will take care of the demon." And also, she never comes and sees me.
She's so cold-hearted.
So mean. Yeah, so they go and they unseal the demon, and she has Fern put up the defensive barrier to protect them while she readies the attack spell. And this guy's like, "Oh, you've unsealed me and you defeated the Demon King. I'm gonna get you. Here's my magic, Zoltrak." And it just hits the shield and nothing happens. He's like, "What?" And Frieren's like, "Yeah, man, it's been like, is it
80 years?
80 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, your magic was cutting edge, but the humans took it, and they just adapted it to all their magic. So now it's just in everything. It's part of the defensive magic. It's part of our attack magic. Everyone's using it. It's weak sauce now." Jason, you absolutely loved this scene, didn't you?
I sure did. It actually, so after I turned off the episode and I went, like, I was falling asleep, I went to bed, I was thinking about it. And the first thing that came to mind was I was cleaning out the garage quite a while back when my kid was younger. And he found my Walkman, which is
Oh God,
it's a CD player for the youngins. It's a portable battery powered CD player. It spun a disc in your pocket. And
it wasn't a tape.
No, I got a Walkman. It had 15-second anti-skip.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was one of the good ones.
Zoltrak.
And he looked at me and he goes, "What's this? Is this a like old style MP3 player?" And I'm like, It could play MP3 CDs, I think, maybe. And it just like that time gap of technology. And like nowadays, like I have got 3 PCs for me and my kids. None of them have a CD or DVD player because it's just technology gone. And like this really felt like standing still and watching the world kind of pass you by and take what you thought was the pinnacle of technology and just go so far beyond it that you're just like you're holding a rock at that point, and you threw the rock. So it didn't do anything.
Prehistoric.
Exactly. So yeah, I really enjoyed this scene.
Jeremy, I thought for sure you would like this scene. I honestly did.
I mean, I liked that it was combat. I liked that something happened.
That's not what I meant. I meant the concept of magic evolving after 80 years and showing.
I like the concept.
Growth. Yeah,
I did like the concept. It was also a cool power fantasy moment, and I'm torn on it because it's a cool power fantasy moment. It's cool to see everything Jason said is true, but at the same time, it meant that the combat was super easy, barely an inconvenience.
But it's the 3rd episode.
I know for sure, but that kind of like this is one of the 2, I think, real battles.
3. 3.
Are you counting the dragon?
Of course, I'm counting the frickin' dragon.
That was beautiful.
I am not counting the dragon. The dragon. They didn't even really participate in the dragon fight. I'm talking about Frieren fighting.
Oh, only Frieren fighting?
Only Frieren.
Okay, yeah, sure. She didn't fight there.
This is her only fight. She didn't do anything in the other one.
Well, she did. She did a bunch of dispelling.
She did one dispelling.
Yeah, something where she participated, and I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to figure out like what is the overcome conflict. What is it that made me wonder whether they were going to succeed the fight? In this one, it was the narrator's a dishonest narrator, whatever it's called, where you're not given the complete information, and so it looks like there might be a challenge when they're unreliable. Thank you. There isn't really a challenge, but you get to pretend there's a challenge, and as far as we know as the audience, maybe there is, and it seems like there is. And then later we get the same thing where it's unreliable narrator. So that kind of, I liked it when it happened here, but then when it happened later, I was like, oh, come on. That's too many unreliable narrators. Because it also happened with the dragon, unreliable narrator. So like I had a little trouble with that looking back at it as sort of, I'm not seeing any fights that were actually difficult for Frieren. And even for the rest of the party, I mean, the only one that seemed to have trouble was Stark in one of his fights. So, I don't know. Everything was too easy. Sorry.
I think that fits a post we defeated the Demon King world.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But exactly. I was just about to make that point. Like they murdered the Demon King. What else in the world could come up to challenge her?
Exactly.
Like she was going to see Zoltrak as if she was shopping. Like this was just another errand she needed to do, but she used it as an opportunity to teach her apprentice. And if her apprentice wasn't there, she would have gone unseal. There would have been no conversation. There wouldn't have been no taunting. Like, and we see that later on with Frieren. She has 0 tolerance and 0 patience for demonkind. So
also she's being yelled at for being flashy. She's learned to be efficient.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But for me, that is kind of the pinnacle of what bugs me about it is, okay, so the interesting story's already told. Cool.
Good. To you.
Yeah.
Do you view your life that way, too? The interesting part's already been told.
No, because I haven't beat the Demon Lord yet.
Ooh.
No, I mean...
I'm still working on the interesting part. She's not. She's just trying to come to closure with a relationship she had that she probably won't even care about in 300 years.
This is a concept that I loved in other stuff, and nothing touched on it like Frieren does, but there's a terrible reference, but you guys remember the movie Hook?
Yeah, Hook,
and the whole concept of the movie Hook is that the life after the fight with Captain Hook is the real adventure. I saw that as a kid and was like, I love that. I adopt that as my life philosophy. I've thought about it. To live will be Rob Williams saying that has lived in my heart this whole time. Frieren is taking that and like let's take it apart. Let's open it up and really dig into what that means.
How's that going to work for her?
What do you mean?
Well, what happens when these humans die?
We'll find out.
Well, no, just think about it. What happens when these humans die? Is she still going to be alive?
Yes.
So she's going to find new humans and repeat the process?
Right.
And then more new humans and repeat the process?
Yes.
So at what point does it just become stale?
That's the question, isn't it?
But it's not a question to me. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, if your lifespan is 3,000 years, then no amount of, I really want to focus on this 10-year change in me is going to change the relationship you have with entities that live such a tiny fraction of your life. Yeah, immortality. Well, what I think is immortality in itself isn't something that you can tell a story about that's going to be compelling to me. Maybe to other people, but not to me. Because when I think about it, it's not going to be those moments and like the changes of your personality, because you're on such a vast time scale that those changes are transitory. Like, they're just going to be there for a little while, and then some other thing is going to come in and it's going to change your life a different way. And this won't really have had that big of an impact in the grand scheme of your life. It's just a matter of numbers in looking at her compared to everybody around her. So I don't know. I would find it more, granted, this is doing what I think would be more interesting, which is like focusing on the present moments of what is interesting about her life today and what she's going through today. I just think that those present moments that I would be interested in are more of the adventuring and challenge and overcoming obstacles sort, rather than the character development. But I mean, I've said that already. It's not immortality in itself that makes this boring. It's the portions of her life that we're focusing on and what she's trying to accomplish in them. That's all.
I just think she's the vessel for the theme, and I think she makes the theme easy to explore because of that rule of the elf life.
Makes it work too.
Hi, birthday. Oh yeah, they kill Zolchak. She uses his own spell against him, which is just the word. Poor guy.
Yeah.
What's the spell called you killing me with? Oh dang. I mean, to him it was like a 5-minute gap, right? Like he was like, I'm doing great. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Also, then the little old man turns out to be a child who had flipped up Frieren's skirt. And this scene made me laugh because the little kid flips her skirt, and Himmel goes, "What? I've always wanted to do that."
Yeah.
Again, showing. Okay, we had the hero Himmel. He always came and protected this village, but then no, he had flaws. He was a person like anyone else.
Yep.
All right, we're on the 4th episode, guys.
Woo!
Trucking along.
Beach. Okay, yeah, beach. Covered in litter, shipwrecks. Apparently, ships cannot stop crashing on this beach, and this town is about to have their New Year celebration. So they stay for the winter, and Frieren cleans this beach. We also, I think, this is maybe the second time we have Flamel mentioned, but it's the first time we mentioned that her grimoire that we get is a fake. There are no real grimoires of Flamel, but there are lots of fakes.
It's in the dub. It's pronounced Flamma.
Okay, I don't care.
Okay.
I don't think I could say that. Flamma?
Mm-hmm.
Flamma.
L is silent?
No. Oh, the end L?
End L. The end L, the L's.
I never heard them pronounce the L at the end.
I don't even remember how they pronounced it.
I don't. Yeah, I honestly don't remember.
It's like Bahamut.
All right, so they clean up the beach, and they find out that Frieren had missed the New Year festival because she is a lazy pants who likes to sleep in, and you have to get it up at sunrise for this New Year celebration. But Himmel had been really upset that she had missed it. So they clean up the beach. They go to the New Year celebration. She's had to be dragged out of bed by Fern, and she sees it, and she's like, it's just an anime about immortality. I don't really
Yeah.
get it.
Thank you.
And then she turns and she sees Fern smile, and she does get it.
The fireworks were the friends we had all along the way.
That's literally what this anime is about.
I know, it's so lame.
Also, again, the musical score comes in. This part was like pure piano, carries the scene, and nothing but regret for Frieren as she realizes what she missed with Himmel.
Thus growing the character
Yes.
in a slow burn.
Should have let him flip your skirt.
Okay, we get this flashback of the heroes' party at Eisen's the dwarf's parents' grave, and Hyder starts praying for them, and Eisen's like, "What are you doing? We don't do that." He's like, "Well, I'm praying for them to be in heaven." And he's like, "Well, we don't believe in heaven." He's like, "Well, that's fine. It's just more convenient if we do." And then everyone's like, "Yeah, that is more convenient." And so they all pray together. And then we in the main storyline, Frieren visits Eisen, and he is at his grave, at the parents' grave, praying. Again, just mentioning it's just more convenient if we do. A beautiful sentiment, a nice theme that hasn't really been unpacked yet about the belief in heaven, especially since now we know it's a physical location we're trying to walk to.
Yeah.
But I just found this scene really beautiful of, maybe it's real, maybe it's not, but it does make our life a little easier to believe it is, that they went to somewhere nice. It was pretty. And then he asked them for help for searching for the grimoire or the notes of Flamme for Flamme who would be in this forest. And Frieren's like, "Yeah, I'll help you." And Fern's like, "Oh, we can't search for like a decade. We just don't have time for that." He's like, "No, it'll be fast. We're looking for a giant tree." So we get a montage of them searching. And the reason Frieren knew it's a giant tree is because we learned that was her master. And her master was literally like, "Hey, do you want this spell that will let you talk to the dead?" And she's like, "No, I don't want that." She's like, "I feel like you're gonna want it because you're definitely gonna mess up at some point in your life. I'm gonna put it here, and I'm gonna plant this tree to protect it." So they find the giant tree. Frieren's able to get inside, and they get the notes, which is just telling you the location of heaven where you can go talk to the dead. And Eisen's he kind of knew what this was, and the whole point was so that Frieren could say to talk to him one more time, because she had cried at the funeral, obviously regretting not knowing him better. So him and Hyder had come up with this plan to try to help her. So they have now the notes to heaven, which, by the way, is located directly next to the Demon King Castle. So they have to revisit the entire 10-year adventure, and it's time to set off.
The hero's adventure, the boring version.
That's an insane take. I know.
Yeah.
I'm going to get all my hot takes in for the next 6 months, and every time you ask for one, I'm just going to play a clip.
I think it would go better if you flipped your hair, because your hair is looking really nice today. If you just flip it once in a while because you have it down, just give us some hair flips with your hot takes.
Anime.
It's gonna.
Perfect.
All right, they're traveling again. They find out up ahead Mountain Pass has a ghost that's killing people, but ghosts don't actually kill people. We know that. So Frieren
People kill people.
People kill people. Nice one. Frieren,
Yeah.
like, hey, it's definitely going to be this monster that makes you see someone from your past. And like, so just when you see someone from your past, just shoot it. And Fern's like, yeah, that'll be easy. And then she sees Hyder, and she's not able to attack. And then Frieren is like, okay, I'll do it. And she sees Himmel, and she's like, that's interesting. Last time it was Femme. But then she does manage to shoot it and kill the monster.
Hold up.
Yep.
Yeah, because Himmel goes, shoot. Which I found very interesting that her vision of what he would say, because she goes, that's exactly what Emma would say, because they had that trust, that relationship, that love that she didn't realize that they had until he was gone.
They find a dragon nest with a red dragon guard in it, and they try to. And there's a grimoire in there she really wants because she collects spells. Also, we got to talk about the reason she collects spells was just because Himmel once said, "I think it's really cool. You have a bunch of cool spells." So that just became her thing. I think that's nice. Anyway,
That's cute.
they try to fight the dragon. Doesn't go well. They have to run and hide. And she's like, well, I guess we'll just play hide and seek with it for a couple hours till we wear it down. And Fern's like, I don't want to die. It's like, all right, well, Eisen said his apprentice was in this area. Let's get ourselves a warrior. So they go to this village where this apprentice is Stark the warrior, and he is praised as a hero who defeated the dragon. And they find him, and he's like, yeah, I didn't move. I was too scared, and the town thinks I drove the dragon away. And the dragon hasn't attacked since, so it's just working. And I hide here, and I just hope no one notices. And this is Stark the warrior. Your guys' thoughts on Stark?
He's fascinating. This is probably one of the first characters I've come across that has confidence issues, that it hasn't bugged the absolute crap out of me. Because he's not whiny about it, and he knows he's strong. He just has a tough time stealing his resolve. But when he does, he takes that active action. He takes, he becomes the warrior he knows he is. He just has a hard time getting there. And he still does, even up until where we've watched so far. And it's getting easier for him. But at this point, he's shaking in his boots. But there's this cleave in this cliff that's nearly a half-mile long, and that's his training, is just cleaving this cliff that's probably 40 stories high. So he's obviously powerful, which, again, coming back to Eisen, he had to defend himself in a way he didn't expect, because the power difference that he had felt from Stark in that moment was so massive that he got scared. And that just says a lot about Stark. And Stark wrestling with his own internal demons it's fascinating to watch. I really enjoy it.
He really grew on me. I thought maybe he was a dragon at the beginning. I had all kinds of interesting theories where I was like, hey, maybe this is going on, maybe that's going on. None of them turned out to be true. But,
it
I
happens,
actually kind of like
me.
that. Yeah, right? I like that, though. And, yeah, he grew on me. There's a lot of situations where I expected him to do one thing and he did something completely different. So, for instance, yes, let me carry her.
Yeah, I'll take her. It's a curve.
Yeah. There was one scene where a guy's tied up on a chair, and I figured he'd just pick the chair up or turn and face the enemy or whatever. But there were times when he would just try to cut the rope and leave, or cut the chair up and leave. Right? The characters made sensible decisions many times, and that was really cool to see. So every time Stark behaved in that manner, and the way they resolved their own little internal, I would say, teenage quarrels. I don't even want to call them lover spats or lover quarrels yet, because they're not in that relationship, but they seem to be headed there. And so the way that they handled that was also very interesting and very mature, and you don't see that very often between him and Fern. And so a lot of the things he did grew on me. Yeah, I don't really have any problems with him.
Kind of similar to what you were saying, Jason, except for the fact that they made him a coward. And then they tied that into his lack of self-confidence. And then they gave us a very good reason for his lack of self-confidence, despite his overwhelming power.
Mm-hmm.
It is insane how much sway a parent has over a child's internal self-worth, and this uses that to its full effect. And normally you're like, man, you can cut through a mountain. Why would you think you're weak? Well, his dad told him he was weak, and that's gonna stick with him. Yep, that makes sense. I can totally buy that as a justified reason. And then the ultimate result is it makes him act like a coward, even though he's not. He just doesn't believe in himself at all. Also, I love how whiny he gets. He's mostly like a stoic. I'm just gonna suffer quietly, and then every once in a while he just, and then his complaining about,
why do you hate me?
This is hard.
What did I do to you?
Now that's very much a dub thing. I know what you guys are talking about. I saw that, and he's not quite that whiny in the sub. He's a bit murmury, but he doesn't whine that much. I actually found it a little grating when I switched to dub for a while.
I liked him. Yeah. And so we'll go over this dragon scene, which I think we have conflicting opinions on, but I thought this was a great intro. The reveal of his scar purpose and stuff, all that stuff was great. So they're like, hey, we've come here to ask you to help with the dragon. And he's like, well, he tells them the truth about what had happened. And Frieren's like, well, I think you'll do the right thing. I'll give you till tomorrow morning, and then we'll decide. And then when they go to bed that night, Fern hears explosions in the distance. She goes and start cutting into the mountain. Reveals the gull. What do you call that? Crevasse.
Yeah.
Behind him is just him striking the mountain over and over. And Fern gives him like a little pep talk as well. And in the morning, he does show up, although late. And he has to keep the dragon busy for 30 seconds so that Frieren can kill him. And then the battle starts. And while it's starting, Frieren's like, yeah, that's what I thought. It doesn't make sense for a dragon not to have attacked the town all this time. The dragon's scared. It can sense how overpowered this guy is. And the dragon actually, like, the first two attacks are like, get away from me. He's just like swiping the ground and trying to get Stark off of him. There's this great camera shot of Stark holding onto his face as the dragon's flying into the air, but you see it like the camera's locked onto Stark's back. Really cool shot. And then he does this big power cleave, and then he starts yelling at Frieren like, okay, cast a spell, you old hag, let's do this. And she's like, it's dead. He's like, oh, it's dead. And then a great scene of Frieren like trouncing into the nest, like, ooh, treasure, treasure, treasure.
And then Fern goes, you can only take 3 things. She's like, oh.
Jeremy, I thought we were going to get more complaints out of you.
Oh, I thought it was a very cute scene. It just lacked impact for me.
Killed a whole dragon. The impact was pretty hard.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so so we get this. Did we already know that Eisen had smacked him and that's where the scar came from?
It's revealed during the fight.
During the fight. That's what I thought. Right. And so for me, it was kind of I was hoping for more. But to have him just eliminate the obstacle that quickly, and then to find out, oh, he's really overpowered. Okay, so it's the same situation as with the Zoltrak thing, where like, okay, problem arises, but it's not really a problem. It's just done.
The dragon ran off from the town because it was scared of him.
Sure. Yeah.
So the power imbalance was already there before the fight started.
Right, but that's what I mean, is that's essentially, they cast doubt on that. He says, oh, the dragon didn't run off. I don't know why the dragon hasn't been attacking. I'm a coward. I'm not strong enough to defeat it. I've never fought a monster before. So that's the narrator casting, doubt on that.
A character talking is not a narrator. That's bonk. And the story drops multiple. The story drops multiple hints. Like Frieren calls out, it's weird that dragon has never attacked this town. Like they hint heavily going into this. The crevice. Wow, it's weird the dragon's not attacking. And even as they get there, Frieren's like, yeah, that's what I thought. This is OP as hell.
Sure.
Also, like this was about Stark, but it was also about Frieren. like, again, later on, we find out she has zero hesitation for monsters and demons. There is no doubt in my mind that she was holding back in order to teach Fern a lesson, but she then, out of respect for Eisen, is also teaching Stark a lesson. That this was such a mentor move.
And even picking up, I think she could have taken the dragon herself, but was like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's pick up Stark, Eisen, as a favor to Eisen.
You don't think there's any chance that she's just lazy?
I mean, she's obviously lazy
100%
in some places.
And she's got time to spare? Because if it takes longer, it takes longer. It doesn't really matter.
I choose to see the setup and the relationships and the context as this was a teaching moment. There's a reason she said, I need 30 seconds. Because she knew he could defeat it in 30 seconds.
Yeah. The moment that she said that, I was like, oh, he's going to kill the dragon in 30 seconds. Okay, so this isn't really a fight. This is just a demonstration, like an introduction to Stark. Okay.
It did serve
pretty,
that, yes, but this served as a teaching moment.
Right,
this
it wasn't an obstacle.
Stark.
It was a personal obstacle.
Yeah, this is Stark.
But not to Frieren.
Look how strong you are. Again, this was a favor to Eisen to teach his student, hey, you can do this. You don't need us to do it for you.
I think she was just letting, like, maybe Stark can do it. He seems powerful enough that he might be able to. Sure, let him try. What's the harm? 30 seconds, go.
Sure.
So, but, I mean, the thing for me is the two fights that we've had so far, both of them have not been challenging. The only challenge was just his psychology. Challenging his psychology. And it very quick. Very, very quick.
Both these fights were not meant to be battles.
So what is the obstacle that she's overcome so far? We're how many episodes in?
Caring about other people.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Okay.
That's my problem. And I said it that way for you guys.
It's fair. You know, it's a fair thing. I can't say anything else.
I don't like a lot of itchy, and you do. So you know, we all have our thing.
Yep.
Etchy, not itchy.
Itchy is even better.
Okay, can we move on?
Itchy is after the etchy.
Yes.
All right.
Nicely done.
So yeah, he decides to go with them. They're sent out from the town. They reach a sealed up checkpoint, and they're not allowed to pass through. And Frieren just seems like, cool, I guess we'll live here for the next 2 years. And meanwhile, Stark is at a tavern where he used to get ice cream with Eisen, and he's really upset that the ice cream seems smaller. He's not happy with shrinkflation. and the bartender's like, I'm the one who used to serve this to you. This is exactly the same. He's like, no, this is way smaller. But then Fern's like, hey, we got to get out of this town. We can't stay here for 2 years. So they do a bunch of running around. And then in the end, the guards come up to Frieren, and the mayor comes up, and then he's like, oh, I didn't realize it was Frieren, the legendary mage. You guys can just go. Like, just go. And so they do.
Obstacle surmounted.
This wasn't. I mean, what's the point?
That's been my question the whole time.
The obstacle was Frieren's lackadaisical, slow nature, not the actual guard.
She also obviously does not like the fame that has come with slaying the Demon King.
Oh yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it seems like basically we're getting the tour through the kingdom. Basically, here's Checkpoint Town. Some things can happen, and we move on.
I don't know if I agree with that, because one of my issues is that like a lot of villages just feel like
the same.
A village, yeah. Which I'm sure in a big country, when you travel across it, that probably is how it would feel.
Plus, it gets them out of the way, and you can look at themes and characters and all that jazz.
Right. But important facets of storytelling. Probably
Yeah.
the most important facets.
We'll put some
storytelling.
cardboard up and say it's a village so we can focus on the characters.
Next time we play, Jeremy, just remember
You're gonna
Up,
blow
oh.
me up.
up,
Friendly
over,
fire
down, down,
is
down.
not.
Up, right, down, down, down.
In Helldivers
no.
2, friendly
That's the
fire
new-
is not. Okay. They come across a landslide in the mountains and they help to clear it out. This is just some character building, some like Stark complaining about Fern just calling him Mr. Stark all the time when he's like, we're like literally almost the same age. And it's been weeks now. They talk about how rare elves are. This is where Frieren's like, I haven't seen an elf in 400 years. We don't really like to breed.
Kind of her fault, though.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Hiding out in the forest.
right?
Yeah, but I think the biggest point is that like elves they're not romantic. They don't want to procreate.
They don't seem to. She literally says it doesn't. They don't seem to have a drive.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Nothing relatable to this podcast. Whatever, we move on. They travel on. That's literally that's what I wrote. This is where the flashback of Himmel saying the statues will help Frieren remember. All right, in a town. Oh yeah, this is where. Okay, so we come to the town where Frieren sees some demons walking through. They're first introduced to demons. They look like humans with horns on their head, and Frieren starts to cast a spell to kill them. And the guards tackle her, and she's arrested and sentenced to 2 to 3 years in the dungeon. And we learn that these demons are a peace envoy because the demon clan of Ara the Guillotine, who used to serve under the Demon King, is trying to reach peace with this town that she never has been able to capture because of a magical barrier up around it.
And she's one of the 7 sages of destruction? Or
Sure.
6?
That sounds good.
7?
Yeah, basically, highest rank or higher ranking in the Demon King army, whatever.
Do we want to get pedantic here and argue?
Yeah,
about...
how high did the shield go around town?
Above maximum flying height.
Maximum. Okay. What is maximum flying height?
It's how high you can fly with magic.
What about creatures that don't fly using magic but fly using wings?
They also have a maximum flying height, don't they?
Yeah. So does it beat them?
Yes.
What if they're really small, like a bird?
Yes.
So that would
Birds
be like,
birds aren't monsters or demons, so they'd be able to pass through.
well, what if it's like a familiar for an evil demon?
There are no
That would-
familiars for evil demons in this world.
We don't know that yet. We haven't seen all of the sages. Or
So why ask a
They're
theoretical question for a thing that doesn't exist yet?
because you're giving me theoretical numbers and I'm having to deal with the potential.
I'm not
things
giving
that
you
might
any
pass them.
numbers.
That's true, and that's worse. I want theoretical numbers.
It would be really stupid and
We should call it a dome. I'm cutting you off.
It would ruin the reality to be like, hey, what is the maximum flying height for magic? I'm glad you asked, Stark. Let me pull up this chalkboard and write out the math for that.
I just think it shows in that moment. It shows lazy writing. They could have just said a dome, and it would be much easier. Solve all the problems.
They
Done.
show a dome.
But they didn't say a dome. They said
because they
maximum flying
showed-
height. Later, they said maximum flying height. Don't say that. It's dumb.
I think it made a lot of sense. And it also world builds the fact that they can fly with magic and that there is a limit to it. It's not just whatever you want to space.
But they tell us the limits later. She's like, I can fly for 30 minutes. So however high you can get with that.
No, that is not the maximum flying height. That is not the only
That's
rules
true.
of magic.
That's
Look,
true.
Most people don't fully understand the physics of like air and how birds fly. But they don't look at birds and like, why aren't you all the way in space, you dumb bird? You don't understand the rules, but there is a maximum height, and it's fine. You don't need to know the rules to understand that birds can't go to space.
That's not true. That is not true. If you're going to say maximum flying height, you have to say maximum flying height in relation to what? And they did.
No, you don't.
They said, yes, they did. And they said what? They said maximum flying height to using magic or evil monsters. So evil monsters are an alternative to magic, which means that they're not necessarily buoyant by magic, which means they're flying on their own power. So then we have to look at all the other monsters that we've encountered so far, and we see a wide variety of them. They look like just standard beasts in many cases with too many eyes and fangs.
But they can't go to space, so there is a maximum flying height.
Sure, but that is a stupid expenditure of mana. Just have a dome. If you're going to have something that goes all the way up to space to block anything that can't go to space, because you have to get higher to whatever you're trying to block.
I didn't say to space. I just said maximum flying height.
But you got to get higher than whatever you're blocking.
Yes.
Which means you have to be confident. You have to be confident that you're above.
This is a spell of Flamlamala.
Right. So it would go even higher than needed. Just call it a dome. Boom. Problem solved.
It's not a problem. You're the only one making it a problem.
Oh, it's a problem. I'm just the only one that noticed it.
I enjoyed the world building that we showed here, that there is a maximum flying height for magic users. Cool. I knew we could fly. I now know there's a rule.
I think the rule could have been shown many other ways, and I think it was shown later. So it wasn't necessary here.
Oh, that's the maximum length of flying.
I'm pretty sure they also talk about the maximum height.
Then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, that's not true.
Can we not have this conversation?
We would have this conversation no matter what.
I've been waiting for this conversation for 3 days.
Oh no, here we go.
You're right. We should move on. We do see the town's leader. His name is Granat, and he takes the demon leader, this lord that's the peace envoy. His name is Lugner, into his son's room, and he pulls his son's sword. He's like, "My son died fighting you guys," and he puts the sword up to Lugner. He's like, "I'm just gonna kill you guys. I actually hate you demons." And Lugner's like, "Oh, my father was also killed. I understand how you feel." And then Granat's like, "Oh, I feel bad now, and you guess you stay." But we just saw a flashback for this from Frieren with this really cool story about when the hero's party encountered a demon child, and Himmel couldn't bring himself to kill it, even though it had just eaten these villagers' child. And the mayor of the town takes this demon child under the wing and raises it for a certain amount of time. And then it murdered the mayor and took his child to give to the couple of the child he ate. And Himmel's like, "Well, so you're just like evil?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'm a demon." And when Freeman and also when he was going to kill it, it was like, "Mommy." And then when Freeman goes to kill it, it calls for mommy again. She blasts it anyway. And she's like, "Why? You don't have mommies." She's like, "Oh, it makes humans stop killing us. Okay, I'm out. Bye."
This was awesome. Absolutely love this story because it also gives you a glimpse at when the demon actually killed the mayor and took the child to give to those parents. I couldn't help but think about, well, what was that motivation? And the only thing I could come up with was that it was preservation, right? Because it wasn't any sort of apology or anything. It was entirely because it felt danger from them. They had a desire to kill it. So then the question becomes, would the demon have been okay living with humans if no one had a desire to kill it? And I don't know the answer to that.
It was transactional. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I took something from you, so I'm going to give you something back. And if I kill him, I don't have to give him anything back. He's dead. Mm-hmm. Also, they eat people, so they're cattle. Right.
Right. But it did make it clear that it hadn't eaten anyone in that entire time, however long that was. It may have only been a month or two, but
it's odd because it did seem like it was trying to almost do a good deed from its own point of view.
The way it was portrayed. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's still some questions there.
One of my favorite parts about it was just seeing how powerful Himmel was because of how fast he was not only able to take that demon's arm, but then also rescue the child in just a blink of an eye. That was really cool.
Yeah. I saw this storyline starting and was like, oh, Frieren's gonna have to learn to get past racism. Nope. Frieren's right.
Yep. They never change.
Humans are bad.
I don't know if I've ever seen an anime steer that quickly away from. No, just kidding. These guys are monsters. They have to die. They deserve everything they get. And then we come back to Lugner, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna take over the town and kill everybody." I can't believe pretending to be nice was working.
Double down.
But he said, or he doesn't send, one of his aides is like, I'm gonna go kill Frieren myself, and he uses magic wire around her neck, and she's so good at manipulating her mana, she uses it like magic wire and just both blocks his and then dismembers him. And she warns him, she's like, hey, I'm pretty strong, you're not gonna want to do this. He's like, oh no, I'm gonna get you, and then he's in parts.
Lugnir even warns him, like, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't go to her. And then all of a sudden he's gone. He's like, that's not good.
The young are so impetuous.
So because the guard was killed, she's assuming she's going to get blamed for that. So she escapes and goes into hiding. But to his credit, the Ganat, the leader of the town, he's like, oh no, this was definitely the demons. So he goes to attack Lugnir, but of course he's ill prepared. The guy has blood magic attacks that he's able to do.
Okay, so I don't have a ton of praise for this anime, but so I don't want to gloss over this because I do want to praise him here. I want to praise this guy. It's done so casually. He comes to this conclusion that she did not kill the guard, and that a demon did, and it is just passed off as not cunning, not spectacular epiphany on his part. It's just common sense.
He's just like,
And
hey, you have a
love
demon
that.
missing. Clearly this was you.
Yeah. So many anime would turn that into like, oh, a strategic wizard had to come in and figure this out, or this guy is so wise to have discerned this. Whereas with this one, it's like, no, it just makes sense.
Or a 4-episode we're chasing down the wrong person.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Also, I think what I really loved about something we skipped over is Stark notices that Lugnir did not take his eyes off Frieren the entire time she was being arrested. And he's like, he didn't even notice me. In fact, he just saw me as an ant. And it scared him. He was like, he is that powerful.
Yeah, Stark tells Fern, like, I'm terrified of that man. Or that demon. Frieren runs into Stark and Fern, and she's leaving town. And Stark's like, we gotta go back. We gotta, like, fight these bad guys. And she's like, no, I'm just gonna go. And he's like, oh, okay. The great thing about Frieren is, or maybe the bad thing about her, but great thing about her character is that she's just like, you guys are gonna do the right thing, and I'm gonna go do the right thing, and I don't need to tell you the plan. She has so much faith in them. She's like, oh, you guys, in her mind, you guys can handle him easily. So I'm leaving to go deal with the bigger threat. But she doesn't tell him that. She's just like, I'm leaving, bye. and Fern's like, okay, well, we're going to go take care of this. And Stark's like, what? What is happening? In fact, later, Stark's like, I'm going out there. And you think he's like, oh, getting ready for battle. He's like, I'm going to beg Frieren to come back. Fern's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
But Stark and Fern go off to rescue the leader of the town, Granat, and Stark gets caught rescuing him, but finds his courage, fights a little bit, but then reveals he's actually the distraction so that Fern can blast Lugnir with her magic. And then they grab the guy and they run away, but he ends to get blood on him, so he's able to track them. They go to a church where they're safe, but that's when, Stark, I'm going to leave. And he has this big battle. He battles the Lugnir's little pixie assistant demon who can copy any warrior ability she's ever seen, which means she's using Eisen's. And Fern battles Lugnir, who seems to get her at first, like pins her against the wall, but then she reveals she's kind of just pumping him for information and grabs her staff, and they have this there's a great cool magical battle and a great cool physical fight going on at the same time. It's good stuff. Mm-hmm. And then Lugnir also remembers who Frieren is and realizes that these guys can hide their power levels. These Earthlings can hide their power levels.
I did like how it became very apparent that Lugnir was nowhere near Fern as far as like power. But that Stark was having a hard time and that he had to not only overcome his, trepidation, but also be able to steel himself enough to be like, hey, as long as I'm on my 2 feet, I'm not defeated.
I thought it was kind of weird. I have two criticisms. One criticism is just that the problem was solved with hiding the power levels again, which it's a minor criticism. I liked the fight, so I'm willing to concede that, and it doesn't bother me.
I felt they did a really good job of explaining why that's so effective against demons.
It was tasteful. Yeah, especially like later when they're describing how demons see things differently and would never hide their power levels.
Right.
But with his battle, I really liked it, and I was all in on it until he stood up and she hit him, and he's like, haha, your blows don't land as hard as my master. I don't know why I didn't notice, but you're just not really hitting me that hard. And it's like, well then, why were you laying on the ground pretending it hurts so bad if she doesn't hit you that hard?
That I was about to say, like, I agree with 90% of what Jason said, except for then he says that line, which to me says what I've been losing to again was my self-confidence. I assumed you were hitting me so hard that I kept going down like, oh, you're getting me. But I just realized I've actually been hit harder than that, and I can take it.
I'll agree with that because the wound he suffers on his shoulder, that looked like it severed his his collarbone. Like, and the way it takes him down, I mean, I'm like, wow, that he's gonna bleed out. And if there wasn't, and it was all in his head, then I don't like that.
Yeah, it feels like a stretch to use that as like a beating his own psychology moment.
But that is his biggest hurdle.
It is, but in this one, he's hallucinating injuries. That seems a little much.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, the axe does catch him on his shoulder and take him to the ground. I mean, he does suffer a laceration. I mean,
okay, hallucinating severity of injuries.
Yeah, I think the damage that he thought he was taking was less than what he actually was taking.
So they win their fights, and then afterwards we go over to Frieren, who's facing Aura.
This was amazing.
And most of this it's because Aura has these scales, and basically she weighs her soul versus your soul, which is really your mana, your power level. Whoever's is
9,000
heavier, she gets to take. Whoever's heavier gets to take control of the other person, even though strong warriors can maybe resist it for a few moments, but that's about it.
That's all the time we have.
The fight's actually really fast, but we're shown mostly a flashback of Flammy.
Flammy Lamani.
Finding Frieren after her elf village was attacked and destroyed by a demon, and Frieren had killed the demon, and then forcing Frieren to be her apprentice, and then training her for years to hide her power level. And again, explaining, for demons, mana levels is their societal rankings. Like rich people, powerful people wear rich clothes to show that they have high status. To a demon, your mana is everything. So they may hide it for a second for a combat reason or something, but they would never actually really hide their power level, because that is to show how important they are, and the idea of not doing it doesn't even come to them. So it's kind of obvious where this is going, because Aura's like, oh, I'm so powerful. I'm hundreds of years old, Frieren. You don't even know. And she's like, and you just used mana to like take out a bunch of my headless automaton soldiers, the undead soldiers I control.
Automatons, no!
Sorry.
No. PTSD. I'm running to the hills.
So, but yeah, so it goes exactly the way you think it's going to go. My favorite part, though, so yeah, Frieren releases her mana, she takes control of the scales, and then instead of like blasting her or doing anything, she's just like, now kill yourself, and walks away. And then it just shows Aura pick up a sword and be like, no, slice. And even though demons dissolve into dust, they do bleed for a few seconds first.
Yeah.
And of course the camera goes to her perception, and then you see the camera
Yeah,
fall to
yeah.
the ground.
Yep.
Ugh.
Yep.
I think one of my favorite things about this entire anime is just how beautiful even the mundane, but also the battles are animated. And this moment is gruesomely animated, where she starts cutting her hair
Yeah.
before she gets to. Oh, it was just like ugh.
This is the moment Tanya came in to see what I was watching.
Always, right? It's kind of
Perfect.
how it's got to work.
Perfect timing.
Yes.
Yeah, in there was also a flashback of her being recruited to the hero party. They had already all formed, and they're like, "Hey, we heard there's a mage out in these woods, and we want you to join us." And the priest is like, "Her mana is really low," and she's like, "You guys want the mana so low? You know, I wouldn't be of help." And Himmel's like, "I got a hunch you're gonna be just fine." Good old Himmel. We see Fern come to Frieren on the battlefield, and she's kneeling and praying for the dead. Great callback to the scene with Eisen about the, heaven is just, it's easier to believe it's there.
Convenient.
Convenient, yep.
Super
she's-
convenient since she's literally taking a trip to heaven.
Barely an inconvenience.
Even though she doesn't seem fully
Yes.
convinced it exists. Like,
It's true.
she seems like, we'll see when we get there if it's real. I'm not sure if I trust my master here.
Mm-hmm.
She's pardoned. There's this great scene where the leader of the village is like, "You guys don't have to be so formal," and it calls back to when Stark had been rude to him, and then a guy with a giant axe walks in, and Stark
That's good.
freaks out. He's like, "Wood cutting's done, sir." Almost too cartoonish for this anime, but it got a good chuckle out of me anyway.
Well, and it comes back later too, because he's like
Yeah,
outside.
that's
and
the
he's
background
freaking
again.
out. Yes.
Oh yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
Did we mention that a lot of the rewards she gets from town to town when they do stuff are tomes of Flama?
Which
I
are
mentioned the
fake.
first one, but yeah,
Yeah,
this is
so-
another one.
Before we knew that she was an apprentice to Flama, that this kept coming up, that she would get a tome. And they're like, it's probably, and she's like, it's fake. They're like, yeah, how'd you know? Yeah, they're all fake. And it's funny because then later on we go, oh, she knows they're fake because she spent so much time with her. Not only does she know her handwriting, but also she knows that these tomes didn't do what they say they do.
Yep.
But they do still have real spells in them. Like he calls out, this one does
Right.
have a barrier spell. It's not the super higher than flying height barrier spell that we use. He says that one we pass down orally, but there is an actual barrier spell in this tome. So she is still collecting spells even though they're fake. So. They help rebuild. The cold season begins. They celebrate with the townsfolk, and they're sent off. There is a fantastic line as they're leaving. The guy says, "The House of Granat will never forget what you've done." And through this whole thing, they never. It's not subtle, but it's also never specifically called out because he mentioned my son died. And then they mention his house crest, and then we see the undead soldier with the crest on his shoulder, and they see him burying his son's sword with that crest.
And
then he
the one
says,
in the flashback too, that's kneeling, is the one with that crest on his chest.
Yes, the one who could resist for a few moments.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, "The House of Granat will never forget what you've done." And my thought, because they had called this earlier, what about 1,000 years from now? Maybe they will forget. I'm like, oh no, but he means my house is ended. I will never forget what you've done for me. And what a heavy line to just throw out.
Until I get another wife and have more children and tell them about it, and then they remember. But I do like it. I like what you did there. He's a lord. He needs someone to inherit. He can't just let his house die. He's got enough years ahead of him. He can fire off a few more shots.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm surprised Frieren didn't say that directly back to him.
I know.
Oh, you mean when you take a new wife and just start popping out kids, keep your house
Yeah.
alive?
Yeah. He's a lord. It's his obligation to his people.
They set out. They get caught in a blizzard because they set out at winter, which seems like a terrible idea. And at the base of the mountain, they find an emergency shelter. Stark actually passes out, and they have to carry him. But in the emergency shelter is a half-naked elf doing squats. This is Kraft the monk, and he's an elf that Frieren has never met, but he is, like we mentioned earlier, seems to be way older. He said he like saved the world or something so long ago that people don't even remember that he did it. And so they spend, I think they say 6 months in this winter lasts 6 months for them apparently in this little emergency cabin living together. And at the end, he's like, hey, I'm a big believer in the goddess because I really want someone to praise me for what I did. And now that no one remembers, no one ever praises me, and that's why I really gotta believe in the goddess because someone has to thank me for what I did. And she reveals that Hyder's his pats on her head, and this is again the conversation of, hey, you are mana suppressing, aren't you? Why don't you tell me how you do that? Someone should praise you for how hard you've worked on that, and that's what he starts patting her on the head. And she tells him, I don't need to believe in the goddess. I've been praised enough in my lifetime. But then he leaves off on his own journey.
And I was going, wait, opportunity to expand your race. Where are you going?
I know, me too. I'm trying to make some elf babies.
I think that's what Fern was worried about.
Yeah, probably. She just says perv the moment she opens the door.
Yeah, she's just instantly like, no, let's just freeze to death. Never mind. Yeah. Then while they continue walking through the snow, Frieren falls asleep and she has a dream where Himmel reveals his sword, which is the hero's sword, but it is a replica that they used to give out to kids. And he's always played that he was the hero, but his best friend, Hyder, used to always make fun of him for being a fake hero, so he's decided to grow up and become a real hero. And meanwhile, the modern day party reaches a village that used to contain the hero sword in a cave. And Frieren's late. She's supposed to come here every once in a while and wipe out the monsters because they're attracted to the location of the hero sword, which after doing so, they find out the hero sword's still there. Himmel couldn't draw it. I think we already mentioned that. And Stark is really bummed to learn the legend is a lie. But I have a theory. Frieren kills the Demon King, and Himmel didn't do anything. She just shared the credit with her party.
Oh, that would be painful. But you might be right.
I don't have anything other than this one scene. Like, if you need the hero sword or a powerful magic spell, maybe it was Frieren who did it. All right, they move on.
I did like how the little girl was crotchety, and then she goes, "Yeah, that was for my grandma told me to say that."
Yeah. It is Stark's 18th birthday, and Fern wants to get him a present, and she tries to find him. Frieren already got him a present. It's a potion that dissolves clothing off of people. Hyder told me that he would really like something like this. That men like stuff like this. On our tweeter, I'd use the face. Everyone uses that face. So that face is a meme already. So,
you mean on X?
Sure.
How dare you?
I was listening to a board game podcast, and they mentioned something on X, and I was like, "What?
What
Where?"
is X?
I couldn't. For a whole, and then they're like previously known as Twitter. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right."
Yeah. See, now I'm gonna try something. I'm a little scared. Going in an incognito window. Okay, X.com redirects to Twitter. Cool.
Okay. Anyway, not important. This next town. Oh yeah, birthday. First she meets all these people that he's run into that day. He's like, oh, he helped me get my cat. He's played with us. We're just a great guy. Then finds him cloud gazing. He's basically acting like Jeremy. He's like boobies, poopy,
turds.
And the best part is he's excited to show her. He's like, I can't wait to show Fern the poop cloud. Yes. And then he turns around and sees her, and he's like, yeah, no, she's already in trouble. Yep. Yeah. But she takes him to get a present. And he's like, why would you do that? And it reveals he's never, ever been given a birthday present. Not his parents, not his master. And we start to get Stark's flashbacks. And he's from a village of warriors who are all super powerful, and his brother was the best. And his father was like, your brother is the best. He's the best warrior in the world. And Stark,
You're the worst.
And Stark, you are the worst. You're just a little kid who can't even do anything.
Right, because you're like
The
a quarter
shame
his age.
of the family.
Yeah.
He's like 9.
Yeah. What the heck?
And talk about some visual storytelling, because the dad's like, he is so perfect that his white cloak is still white after killing a monster, and then as soon as he walks up to Stark immediately gets it dirty.
Yep.
And then, but the brother turns out to be this great brother, and he works with training Stark. And Stark's whole thing is that he ran away from this village when the demons attacked, and that's where his cowardice started. And then we get to Frieren, who made Hamburg steak, and she reveals, hey, it was Eisen who gave me the recipe, because that's the birthday present he always gave to his warrior friends as a birthday present. So, and he's like, oh yeah, my master did make this for me every birthday. So you realize Eisen did give him a birthday present. Also, his brother used to make him that. And it shows that when the demon attacked, he didn't just run away. His brother told him, run away and survive. And that's why he decided to run away. This is good storytelling, guys. I texted my brother and told him I loved him after this episode. And then he made fun of me. He called me some names. But don't worry about that. My brother's a horrible person.
I like your brother.
No, that's how he says he loves you. Calling you an idiot.
That's great.
No, but again, it's a fantasy world. It's a very generic fantasy world. But there's a lot of things I think that people can relate to in these stories, that they can find reflections of themselves, and I think that's what makes the story work for me so well.
And I love that even now, Frieren is still going, Eisen equals warrior. Warrior equals like Hamburg steak on birthday. Stark must like it on his birthday. Because he's warrior.
Okay, I have to tell you this then. I watched this episode and I thought, I need to look up a good recipe for Hamburg steak. And I did. That was the impact from this episode.
See? Getting there, working on it.
We all got something out of it.
That's what I got from it. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's kind of like a meatloaf. Okay.
I have one more thing to call out.
Okay.
When he takes his bite of Hamburg steak, his teeth click against the fork. And A, I hate it. But B, man, that level of sound design, I don't think I've ever... I watched a ton of anime with eating it. I've never heard the click of teeth. Ever. That is some detail they are putting in. Even though it made me cringe. Like, oh, no, not teeth on fork. But it audibly clicked. And I'm praising it despite... And the real reason it stood out to me is because it bugged me. All right, so the next episode, I felt like I missed something, but the next episode starts with a man just talking to Frieren about, hey, yeah, my best friend, I used to adventure with him as a kid, and then he became a real adventurer.
So great.
And he's like, come with me, and I was like, no, I don't want to, and I always regret that. Also, I'm trapped in a swamp pit, and I'm about to die. Could you save me, Frieren? And she's like, oh, I don't know, you're dirty.
Are you going to say that this is foreshadowing on how she saves him later?
No. Are
Liar.
you?
Liar. I know you are.
I'm not.
You must. It's such an obvious connection. Like, she reaches out to save him because he's drowning in a pit. It's the same thing. He's in the pit in the town because he doesn't want to be there. He wants to go adventuring, but he won't actually get the gumption up to do it. So she reaches out a hand. I know you knew this.
Dude, that's beautiful. I love that.
You're horrible.
That
I know
was
you knew
great.
this.
No, I was going to say I don't really like this character.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
We only get 2 episodes with him. I didn't see him coming. I was caught off guard by him. I guess it makes sense we need another member of the party, but
Specifically a healer.
Specifically a healer. He kind of feel like they keep pointing out you're just like hider times 2. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping I like him more once we get to spend more time with him. At this moment, I'm not sold on Sign. Your guys' thoughts?
I don't know. I think he's fine. you're right. He's a hider times 2, but all in the worst ways right now. But I do like some of the insights he's got. He teaches both Fern and Stark valuable life lessons from an older man's perspective, and I think it was great.
I can agree with that. One thing that was kind of weird, and I don't know what this says about the world they're in, because that's what I'm looking at it through the lens of, is like world building, is every single priest we've come into contact with that has discussed in depth their philosophy when it comes to their religion. Every one of them has been like, yeah, I don't believe it, but it's really convenient. And if it was true, that would be really great. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, what is the theology in this world, and what it might be that Sign's older brother is actually truly pious, unlike the rest of these guys who are, they're finding
Why is
a
the
way.
scythe so small?
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, his
So-
brother is very life of poverty kind of guy, so he might be very pious.
I think that's why the fact of him being Hyder 2.0 bothers me. With Hyder, it worked for me, especially revealing that him and Himmel were friends together, and the fact that maybe he became a priest just to aid Himmel.
Yeah.
So not even, I don't really believe in all this stuff, but I need the class skills. So I'm going through this class line to get these powers and be able to help my friend. Yeah. That works perfect, but I can't give up the drink that I love so much. That works perfectly for Hyder. Then we're getting the same thing with Signed, and it feels repetitive and like, yeah, you had the same exact issue.
And even the monk, didn't the monk say, oh, yes, I've come to believe in the goddess, but it's really just for convenience? Like when pressed on the issue, he returned to the same statement of for praise, for convenience.
Yeah, it was, I believe in her because I need to believe in her, or else everything I did was for naught.
Yeah, and so that just seems like a very odd way to structure the theology in this world. So I'm curious where they're going with that, because they can't have it 3 times in a row with the only 3 priests that we've really gotten an in-depth moment to discuss this with, and all of them are doing this. Now, granted, they could all just be black sheep in the community that are like, the strangest of the strange or the worst of the worst, but it stuck out like a sore thumb to me.
Yeah, for the monk, because he's an elf who's lived so long, I think that's an interesting question. If you lived all these years, do you still believe in the goddess is the same as believing in an afterlife, right? And again, with Hyder, it worked for me. Sign again, I'm kind of in your boat. Again.
Yeah.
All right. Stark gets bit by poison. They go to after she saves him. Stark gets bit by poison. They go to the church. They find out this guy is a priest. He's a genius priest, which Frieren doesn't like because she's a genius and she doesn't like to hang out with other geniuses.
Seems like Fern's a genius too, even though it's never really outright stated.
Yeah, because wasn't Lugner saying that you're also a genius?
Mm-hmm. And Stark's a genius because of how he dealt with Ison, that he was more powerful than the warrior that was in the party to defeat the Demon King. Like, if you're a kid and you're more powerful than that guy already, that's...
I don't know if it...
He may not have been more powerful, but he was powerful enough to scare him.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Stark decides we're going to recruit this guy, ends up playing poker with them. They lose all their money. Fern's like, don't gamble. They decide to recruit him. There's a great scene where Frieren decides to seduce him and does her kissy move, and he's like, you're just like a child. And it is revealed he likes older women. And she's like, this would have worked. This worked perfectly on Himmel, but now that we know that
for a reason,
all had reasons. And then they stay there for like months trying to get him to go, and then eventually reveals like, my brother didn't leave because of me, so I can't leave because of my brother. And his brother's like, you're a freaking idiot. He's like, okay, I do want to leave. I want to go find my friend who set off adventuring, and when I find him, I'm just going to go with him. And they're like, okay, so they leave.
The most likely place where my friend will be is heaven.
Oh, I also forgot to mention that Frieren isn't certified. One of the reasons where they're going is that she's got to take a magic test because they keep changing the association and the requirements every couple hundred years. She can't keep up.
I'm curious what this is going to do when it comes to her hiding her power level, because if you're taking something that certifies your power level, that
she has to hit grade
does.
A or they can't travel, right?
Yeah, but maybe grade A, maybe she's grade S or triple S already.
We'll talk about
So
it.
she could just
We'll
be
talk
grade
about it
A.
in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll find out, I guess.
All right. So they go to a town, and we find out in this town that Himmel bought Frieren a ring, which we've already kind of hinted at. This ring exists, but she remembers getting this ring. And then Fern's really mad at Stark because he didn't buy her a birthday present. They have a fight. He quits. She gets advice from Sign, who's like, "Hey, you're young. You gotta talk about your feelings." So they make up and they go buy a bracelet together. And then they're all traveling with a merchant in a wagon. And they're talking about the bracelet. And Frieren's like, "I have a ring that matches that bracelet that I got from Himmel." And then a giant bird attacks.
This total Dragon's Dogma 2 style, where just like this griffin style monster comes out of nowhere and picks up their cart.
I love the logical, like, okay, how do we get out of this? Can you catch the cart? Have you ever seen a flying cart? Well, literally right now, yeah. But Frieren kills the monster and then does manage to catch the cart enough to keep them from dying. But they do have to have a montage of repairing it. But she dropped the ring, and it also is her searching for it. But luckily, the merchant has a spell for finding lost accessories, which completely makes sense for a merchant to have, and is not Deus Ex Machina.
No, that one I was okay with.
Okay,
He's an accessory merchant.
Cool. So
I
she
had more trouble with the wheel when they repaired and rebuilt the wheel out there. Maybe she used magic is the only thing I could think
My
of.
God.
Probably.
Okay. There's a conversation between Stark and Sign about what was on the bracelet that he bought for Fern, and it's a reverse lotus flower, which means eternal love. And he turns to Fern, and he's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know. We'll get you a new one." And she's like, "You're a freaking idiot, but also you're not taking my favorite birthday present ever." Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Yeah.
But then she talks to
Don't mean no
Frieren,
harming.
and she's like, "Hey, you had a ring that matched this from Himmel. Did you know that it means this?" And she's like, "Oh, I didn't." And I'm sure Himmel didn't either. They find the ring, and it shows the flashback of Himmel buying the ring and looking at it and going, "Huh." Again, telling, not showing, but he clearly did know what it meant. And then he literally gets down on one knee and places it on her finger. I spent the 13 episodes before this being like, did Himmel like love Frieren? Episode 14 says, yes, he did. And then that's the end.
And I was like, oh, that's cute.
Okay. I was missing that. I was like, that's so cool. All right. And the only thing is, you can't say you ship it when the guy's already dead. That's like, you already know they didn't get together. And so it's kind of hard to be like, oh, go relationship. Oh no, this ends in tragedy, no matter what happens. All right.
What's going to be worse is if they get to the north and there is no heaven. It's just an abandoned Demon King castle and nothing else.
I honestly don't know. Well, it'll be interesting to see which way they go with it. I'm sure there'll be thematic lessons for all of us, and character development, and important storytelling. Anyway, let's go to final review for these 14 episodes. Jason, why don't you start us off since this is your pick?
I have just absolute nothing but praise. I don't even have any real nitpicks either. I mean, there's a scene in one of the last episodes where they're both on her and Sign are on a roof spying on Fern and Stark, and she turns around and the animation of her going down the tiles, and it made me giggle. It was beautifully animated. Why? I don't know, but yeah, like I said, I'm fully enjoying this. I'm looking so forward to starting up on the next season. I'm giving this a 5. This is an easy one.
Jeremy?
So I'll handle all your nitpicks, Jason.
Not mine.
So I think every story that you hear is an argument for some theory or another. And so if the theory and the argument is put together well, it will be convincing.
Which they were.
I wasn't convinced of the central conceit of this anime. So I don't find it compelling as a strong enough tentpole to build this series off of. So with that in mind, there's a ton of things that I would compliment, like the little things, the small things. They do have an eye for detail. They got an eye for character development and for making the characters sound sensible and be realistic, which is both good and bad because real people are boring and you don't normally write stories about real people. So if you have too many real things going
Have you heard
on,
of a biography?
I've heard of them. They're trash. So when this is not a biography, this is supposed to be an entertaining anime. So if you're gonna write a story and it's gonna be about these kinds of things, the little things I don't think are enough to carry the story. They're great as seasonings on their own, but I just don't find them compelling enough or important enough to make up for the lack of a tentpole. So I got to give this anime, I'll give it a 3. I got to give it a 3. It had its moments. I really liked the demon arc. That was fun. And the animation's beautiful. So, I can't say I hated my time with it. I didn't even necessarily dislike it. I just found it to be so meh that it barely made an impression. That kind of thing, where it's like total middle ground.
I forgot about a part, and I really want to talk about it.
Okay.
In Hyder's flashback of, because they're talking about how Hyder was such an adult man, and she remembers when he was old, sitting on a porch with him, talking about how mature he's become, and he's like, I've still got the same mind I had when I was a child, and I just started pretending I was adult because younger people needed me to be that, and that's what I do every day. And I have, honest to God, had the conversation with my adult children who said, Dad, when do you wake up and feel like an adult? And I said, I'll let you know when I get there.
That's the neat part. You don't.
Yeah, that's the
Never
neat part.
do. No.
You know what's hilarious though? When I told my wife about this scene, she was like, "No, I've always felt like an adult." I'm like, "Yeah, that makes sense. She's a very mature person." But for me, the whole idea that we have this very generic fantasy world and we're following a long-living elf, and yet I found so many things relatable, thoughts about events long past, friends lost, friends found, brothers, family, my own sense of mortality and the beauty of that. And while watching a cool dragon fight and a cool demon fight, that's what I come to anime for. That's the kind of depth I love. So this is a 5 for me, which I'm sure you knew by now.
Just to kind of piggyback on that just a little bit, I think one of the things that usually the 5s I give out on this show are because not only did I really enjoy my experience or whatever, but when I turn off the anime, it's still in my head. And the thought experiments are still going in my head. And when I'm laying down and I close my eyes, I'm still thinking about those concepts. And I know that's when a story or an anime has hit me really hard. And this one's got that in spades for me. So.
We do still have a ways to go, though, so we will be discussing the second half. I think it goes to episode 26 in our next podcast.
Correct.
That's what we are watching next.
28, I thought.
Yeah,
or
28. Okay, so we have another
28.
14 to go.
Believe me, I counted.
All right, yeah, second core, here we come. If you have thoughts on our thoughts for the first half of Frieren, please let us know on our Twitter or X,
as you prefer,
at Baka. No, oh gosh.
Oh, here we go.
Twitter at Baka Podcast.
It's late.
No.
Yeah.
What is our Twitter?
At the Anime Baka Club.
At the Anime Baka Club. No, that's our website. TheAnimeBakaClub.com is our website where you can also contact us.
Then I don't
leave a comment where you found us. Our Twitter is.
I'm looking it up.
What is wrong with us tonight?
At Baka Podcast.
At Baka Podcast. Yep, that's our Twitter. You can contact us and let any of us that you disagree with know why we're wrong. Whoever you disagree with.
I'm gonna be on vacation for a while, but I'll be back later.
I'll be honest, I think your points are very valid, especially because you come in from what I'm looking for and what your point of view is. You've always been very clear about that on this podcast. From his own personal view, yes. I had a feeling that this would. What's interesting to me is that like From Eternity did land well with Jeremy, whereas this didn't. Where it's kind of have similar things, but that did have a lot more action, and people died a lot in that. So maybe that's the biggest difference. We'll get into that. We got 2 weeks to think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
See you later.
Sayonara.